Welcome back to the last part of the Sea of Monsters. This is part 3. I'm excited to finally get this ending started. Um yeah, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. Okay, we're just going to jump right in. I hope everyone's ready. I'm ready. I've been ready. Maybe for like 3ish hours or so. Just a random number. Chapter 13. Annabeth tries to swim home. I finally found something I was really good at. The Queen Anne's Revenge responded to my every command. I knew which ropes to hoist, which sails to raise, which direction to steer. We plowed through the waves at what I figured was about 10 knots. I even understood how fast that was. For a sailing ship, pretty darn fast. It all felt perfect. The wind in my face, the waves breaking over the prow. But now that we were out of danger, all I could think of was how much I missed Tyson and how worried I was about Grover. I couldn't get over how badly I'd messed up on Cersei's island. If it hadn't been for Annabeth, I'd still be a rodent, hiding in a hutch with a bunch of cute furry pirates. I thought about what Cersei had said. See, Percy, you've unlocked your true self. I still felt changed. Not just because I had a sudden desire to eat lettuce. I felt jumpy, like the instinct to be a scared little animal was now a part of me. Or maybe it had always been there. And that's what really worried me. We sailed through the night. Annabeth tried to help me keep lookout, but sailing didn't agree with her. After a few hours rocking back and forth, her face turned the face of guacamole, and she went below to lie in a hammock. I watched the horizon, and more than once I spotted monsters. A plume of water as tall as a skyscraper spewed into the moonlight. A row of green spines slithered across the waves, something maybe 100 feet long, reptilian. I didn't really want to know. Once I saw Nereids, the glowing lady spirits of the sea. I tried to wave at them, but they disappeared into the depths, leaving me unsure whether they'd seen me or not. Sometime after midnight, Annabeth came up on deck. We were just passing a smoking volcano island. The sea bubbled and steamed around the shore. One of the forges of Hephaestus, Annabeth said, where he makes his metal monsters. Like the bronze bulls? She nodded. Go around. Far around. I didn't need to be told twice. We steered clear of the island, and soon it was just a red patch of haze behind us. I looked at Annabeth. The reason why you hate Cyclopses so much. The story about how Talia really died. What happened? It was hard to see her expression in the dark. I guess you deserve to know, she said finally. That night, Grover was escorting us to camp. He got confused, took some wrong turns. You remember he told you that once? I nodded. Well, the worst wrong turn was into a Cyclops lair in Brooklyn. They've got Cyclopses in Brooklyn? I asked. He wouldn't believe how many, but that's not the point. This Cyclops, he tricked us. He managed to split us up inside this maze of corridors in an old house in Flatbush. And he could sound like anyone, Percy. Just the way Tyson did aboard the Princess Andromeda. He lured us, one at a time. Dahlia thought she was running to save Luke. Luke thought he heard me scream for help. And me. I was alone in the dark. I was 7 years old. I couldn't even find the exit. She brushed the hair out of her face. I remember finding the main room. There were bones all over the floor. And there were Talia and Luke and Grover, tied up and gagged, hanging from the ceiling like smoked hams. The Cyclops was starting a fire in the middle of the floor. I drew my knife, but he heard me. He turned and smiled. He spoke, and somehow he knew my dad's voice. I guess he just plucked it out of my mind. He said, Now, Annabeth, don't you worry. I love you. You can stay here with me. You can stay forever. I shivered. The way she told it, even now, 6 years later, freaked me out worse than any ghost story I'd ever heard. What did you do? Stabbed him in the foot. I stared at her. Are you kidding? You were 7 years old and you stabbed a grown Cyclops in the foot? Oh, he would have killed me, but I surprised him. It gave me just enough time to run to Thalia and cut the ropes on her hands. She took it from there. Yeah, but still, that was pretty brave, Annabeth. She shook her head. We barely got out alive. I still have nightmares, Percy. The way that Cyclops talked in my father's voice. It was his fault we took so long getting to camp. All the monsters who'd been chasing us had time to catch up. That's really why Thalia died. If it hadn't been for that Cyclops, she'd still be alive today. We sat on the deck, watching the Hercules constellation rise in the night sky. Go below, Annabeth told me at last. You need some rest. I nodded. My eyes were heavy, but when I got below and found a hammock, it took me a long time to fall asleep. I kept thinking about Annabeth's story. I wondered, if I were her, would I have had enough courage to go on this quest? To sail straight into the lair of another Cyclops? I didn't dream about Grover. Instead, I found myself back in Luke's stateroom aboard the Princess Andromeda. The curtains were open. It was nighttime outside. The air swirled with shadows. Voices whispered all around me. The spirits of the dead. Beware, they whisper. Traps. Trickery. Kronos' golden sarcophagus glowed faintly, the only source of light in the room. A cold laugh startled me. It seemed to come from miles below the ship. You don't have the courage, young one. You can't stop me. I knew what I had to do. I had to open that coffin. I uncapped Riptide. Ghosts whirled around me like a tornado. Beware. My heart pounded, and I couldn't make my feet move, but I had to stop Kronos. I had to destroy whatever was in that box. Then a girl spoke right next to me. Well, Seaweed Brain? I looked over, expecting to see Annabeth, but the girl wasn't Annabeth. She wore punk-style clothes with silver chains on her wrists. She had spiky black hair, dark eyeliner around her stormy blue eyes, and a spray of freckles across her nose. She looked familiar, but I wasn't sure why. Well, she asked, are we going to stop him or not? I couldn't answer. I couldn't move. The girl rolled her eyes. Fine. Leave it to me and Aegis. She tapped her wrist, and her silver chains transformed, flattening and expanding into a huge shield. It was silver and bronze, with the monstrous face of Medusa protruding from the center. It looked like a death mask, as if the Gorgon's real head had been pressed into the metal. I didn't know if that was true, or if the shield could really petrify me, but I looked away. Just being near it made me cold with fear. I got a feeling that in a real fight, the bearer of that shield would almost be impossible to beat. Any sane enemy would turn and run. The girl drew her sword and advanced on the sarcophagus. The shadowy ghost parted for her, scattering before the terrible aura of her shield. No, I tried to warn her, but she didn't listen. She marched straight up to the sarcophagus and pushed aside the golden lid. For a moment, she stood there, gazing down at whatever was in the box. The coffin began to glow. No, the girl's voice trembled. It can't be. From the depths of the ocean, Kronos laughed so loudly the whole ship trembled. No! The girl screamed as the sarcophagus engulfed her in a blast of golden light. Ah! I sat bolt upright in my hammock. Annabeth was shaking me. Percy, you were having a nightmare. You need to get up. What is it? I rubbed my eyes. What's wrong? Land, she said grimly. We're approaching the island of the sirens. I could barely make out the island ahead of us, just a dark spot in the mist. I want you to do me a favor, Annabeth said. The sirens? We'll be in range of their singing soon. I remembered stories about the sirens. They sang so sweetly, their voices enchanted sailors and lured them to their death. No problem, I assured her. We can just stop up our ears. There's a big tub of candle wax below deck. I want to hear them. I blinked. Why? They say the sirens sing the truth about your desire. They tell you things about yourself you didn't even realize. That's what's so enchanting. If you survive, you become wiser. I want to hear them. How often will I get this chance? Coming from most people, this would have made no sense. But Annabeth being who she was, well, if she could struggle through ancient Greek architecture books and enjoy documentaries on the History Channel, I guess the sirens would appeal to her too. She told me her plan, and reluctantly I helped her get ready. As soon as the rocky coastline of the island came into view, I ordered one of the ropes to wrap around Annabeth's waist, tying her to the foremast. Don't untie me, she said. No matter what happens, or how much I plead, I'll want to go straight over the edge and drown myself. Are you trying to tempt me? Ha ha. I promised I'd keep her secure. Then I took 2 large wads of candle wax, kneaded them into earplugs, and stuffed my ears. Annabeth nodded sarcastically, letting me know that earplugs were a real fashion statement. I made a face at her and turned to the pilot's wheel. The silence was eerie. I couldn't hear anything but the rush of blood in my head. As we approached the island, jagged rocks loomed out of the fog. I willed the Queen Anne's Revenge to skirt around them. If we sailed any closer, those rocks would shred our hull like blender blades. I glanced back. At first, Annabeth seemed totally normal. Then she got a puzzled look on her face. Her eyes widened. She strained against the ropes. She called my name. I could tell just from reading her lips. Her expression was clear. She had to get out. This was life or death. I had to let her out of the ropes right now. She seemed so miserable it was hard not to cut her free. I forced myself to look away. I urged the Queen Anne's Revenge to go faster. I still couldn't see much of the island, just mist and rocks. But floating in the water were pieces of wood and fiberglass, the wreckage of old ships, even some flotation cushions from airplanes. How could music cause so many lives to veer off course? I mean, sure, there were some top 40 songs that made me want to take a fiery nosedive, but still, what could the sirens possibly sing about? For one dangerous moment, I understood Annabeth's curiosity. I was tempted to take out the earplugs, just to get a taste of the song. I could feel the siren's voice vibrating in the timbers of the ship, pulsing along with the roar of the blood in my ears. Annabeth was pleading with me. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She strained against the ropes as if they were holding her back from everything she cared about. "How could you be so cruel?" she seemed to be asking me. "I thought you were my friend." I glared at the misty island. I wanted to uncap my sword, but there was nothing to fight. How do you fight a song? I tried hard not to look at Annabeth. I managed it for about 5 minutes. That was my big mistake. When I couldn't stand it any longer, I looked back and found a heap of cut ropes, an empty mast. Annabeth's bronze dagger lay on the deck. Somehow she'd managed to wriggle it into her hand. I'd totally forgotten to disarm her. I rushed to the side of the boat and saw her, paddling madly for the island, the waves carrying her straight towards the jagged rocks. I screamed her name, but if she heard me, it didn't do any good. She was entranced, swimming towards her death. I looked back at the pilot's wheel and yelled, "Stay!" And I jumped over the side. I sliced into the water and willed the currents to bend around me, making a jet stream that shot me forward. I came to the surface and spotted Annabeth, but a wave caught her, swooping her between two razor-sharp fangs of rock. I had no choice. I plunged after her. I dove under a wrecked hull of a yacht, wove through a collection of floating metal balls on chains that I realized afterwards were mines. I had to use all my power over water to avoid getting smacked against the rocks or tangled in the nets of barbed wire strung just below the surface. I jetted between the two rock fangs and found myself in a half-moon-shaped bay. The water was choked with more rocks and ship wreckage and floating mines. The beach was black volcanic sand. I looked around desperately for Annabeth. There she was. Luckily or unluckily, she was a strong swimmer. She had made it past the mines and the rocks. She was almost to the black beach. Then the mist cleared and I saw them. The sirens. Imagine a flock of vultures the size of people with dirty black plumage, gray talons, and wrinkled pink necks. Now imagine human heads on top of those necks, but the human heads keep changing. I couldn't hear them, but I could see they were singing. As their mouths moved, their faces morphed into people I knew. My mom, Poseidon, Grover, Tyson, Chiron, all the people I most wanted to see. They smiled reassuringly, inviting me forward. But no matter what shape they took, their mouths were greasy and caked with the remnants of old meals. Like vultures, they'd been eating with their faces, and they didn't look like they'd been feasting on monster donuts. Annabeth swam towards them. I knew I couldn't let her get out of the water. The sea was my only advantage. It had always protected me one way or another. I propelled myself forward and grabbed her ankle. The moment I touched her, a shock wave went through my body, and I saw the sirens the way Annabeth must have been seeing them. 3 people sat on a picnic blanket in Central Park. A feast was spread out before them. I recognized Annabeth's dad from photos she'd shown me, an athletic-looking, sandy-haired man in his 40s. He was holding hands with a beautiful woman who looked a lot like Annabeth. She was dressed casually, in blue jeans and a denim shirt and hiking boots, but something about the woman radiated power. I knew that I was looking at the goddess Athena. Next to them sat a young man. Luke. The whole scene glowed in a warm, buttery light. The 3 of them were talking and laughing, and when they saw Annabeth, their faces lit up in delight. Annabeth's mom and dad held out their arms lovingly. Luke grinned and gestured for Annabeth to sit next to him, as if he'd never betray her, as if he were still her friend. Behind the trees of Central Park, A city skyline rose. I caught my breath because it was Manhattan, but not Manhattan. It had been totally rebuilt from dazzling white marble, bigger and grander than ever, with golden windows and rooftop gardens. It was better than New York, better than Mount Olympus. I knew immediately that Annabeth had designed it all. She was the architect for a whole new world. She had reunited her parents. She had saved Luke. She had done everything she had ever wanted. I blinked hard. When I opened my eyes, all I saw were the sirens, ragged vultures with human faces, ready to feed on another victim. I pulled Annabeth back into the surf. I couldn't hear her, but I could tell she was screaming. She kicked me in the face, but I held on. I willed the currents to carry us out into the bay. Annabeth pummeled and kicked me, making it hard to concentrate. She thrashed so much we almost collided with the floating mine. I didn't know what to do. I'd never get back to the ship alive if she kept fighting. We went under and Annabeth stopped struggling. Her expression became confused. Then our heads broke the surface and she started to fight again. The water! Sound didn't travel well underwater. If I could submerge her long enough, I could break the spell of the music. Of course, Annabeth wouldn't be able to breathe, but at the moment that seemed like a minor problem. I grabbed her around the waist and ordered the waves to push us down. We shot into the depths. 10 feet, 20 feet. I knew I had to be careful because I could withstand a lot more pressure than Annabeth. She fought and struggled for breath as bubbles rose around us. Bubbles. I was desperate. I had to keep Annabeth alive. I imagined all the bubbles in the sea, always churning, rising. I imagined them coming together and being pulled towards me. The sea obeyed. There was a flurry of white, a tickling sensation all around me. And when my vision cleared, Annabeth and I had a huge bubble of air around us, only our legs stuck through into the water. She gasped and coughed. Her whole body shuddered, but when she looked at me, I knew the spell had been broken. She started to sob. I mean horrible, heartbroken sobbing. She put her head on my shoulder and I held her. Fish gathered to look at us, a school of barracudas, some curious marlins. Scram, I told them. They swam off, but I could tell they went reluctantly. I swear I understood their intentions. They were about to start rumors flying about around the sea about the son of Poseidon and some girl at the bottom of Siren Bay. I'll get us back to the ship, I told her. It's okay, just hang on. Annabeth nodded to let me know she was better now. Then she murmured something I couldn't hear because of the wax in my ears. I made the current steer our weird little air submarine through the rocks and barbed wires and back to the hull of the Queen Anne's Revenge, which was maintaining a slow and steady course away from the island. We stayed underwater, following the ship, until I judged we had moved out of earshot of the sirens. Then I surfaced and our air bubble popped. I ordered a rope ladder to drop over the side of the ship, and we climbed aboard. I kept my earplugs in just in case. We sailed until the island was completely out of sight. Annabeth sat huddled in a blanket on the forward deck. Finally, she looked up, dazed and sad, and mouthed, "Safe." I took out the earplugs. No singing. The afternoon was quiet, except for the sound of the waves against the hull. The fog had burned away to a blue sky, as if the island of the sirens had never existed. "You okay?" I asked. The moment I said it, I realized how lame it sounded. Of course she wasn't okay. "I didn't realize," she murmured. "What?" Her eyes were the same color as the mist over the Sirens' Island. How powerful temptation would be. I didn't want to admit what I'd seen what the sirens had promised her. I felt like a trespasser, but I figured I owed it to Annabeth. "I saw the way you rebuilt Manhattan," I told her, "and Luke and your parents." She blushed. "You saw that? What Luke told you back on the Princess Andromeda? About starting the world from scratch? That really got to you, huh?" She pulled her blanket around her. "My fatal flaw. That's what the sirens showed me. My fatal flaw is hubris." I blinked. "That brown stuff they spread on veggie sandwiches?" She rolled her eyes. "No, seaweed brain. That's hummus. Hubris is worse." "What could be worse than hummus?" "Hubris means deadly pride, Percy. Thinking you can do things better than anyone else. Even the gods." "Do you feel that way?" She looked down. "Don't you ever feel like, what if the world really is messed up? What if we could do it all over again from scratch? No more war. Nobody homeless. No more summer reading homework. I'm listening. I mean, the West represents a lot of the best things mankind ever did. That's why the fire is still burning. That's why Olympus is still around. But sometimes you just see the bad stuff, you know? And you start thinking the way Luke does. If I could tear this all down, I would do it better. Don't you ever feel that way? Like you could do a better job if you ran the world? Um, no. Me running the world would kind of be a nightmare. Then you're lucky. Hubris isn't your fatal flaw. What is? I don't know, Percy, but every hero has one. If you don't find it and learn to control it, well, they don't call it fatal for nothing. I thought about that, and it didn't exactly cheer me up. I also noticed Annabeth hadn't said much about the personal things she would change, like getting her parents back together, or saving Luke. I understood. I didn't want to admit how many times I'd dreamed of getting my own parents back together. I pictured my mom, alone in our little apartment on the Upper East Side. I tried to remember the smell of her blue waffles in the kitchen. It seemed so far away. So, was it worth it? I asked Annabeth. Do you feel wiser? She gazed into the distance. I'm not sure, but we have to save the camp. If we don't stop Luke, she didn't need to finish. If Luke's way of thinking could even tempt Annabeth, there was no telling how many other half-bloods might join him. I thought about my dream of the girl in the golden sarcophagus. I wasn't sure what it meant, but I got a feeling I was missing something. Something terrible that Kronos was planning. What had the girl seen when she opened that coffin lid? Suddenly, Annabeth's eyes widened. Percy? I turned. Up ahead was another blotch of land, a saddle-shaped island with forested hills and white beaches and green meadows, just like I'd seen in my dreams. My nautical senses confirmed it. 30 degrees, 31 minutes north, 75 degrees, 12 minutes west. We had reached the home of the Cyclops. This is a sad chapter, Faye. Like I understand that Annabeth really wants to know what the sirens would tempt her with. Like, I don't know. It's such a good chapter. It kind of gives us a little bit more insight on Annabeth, and kind of, it kind of breaks your heart that she wants Luke back, because that's probably not going to happen. Her parents being back together is definitely not going to happen. It's really sad. I feel so bad for her. It's yeah, it's interesting, and the sirens are kind of scary. So they're kind of like vultures with human heads, very spoopy. Um, but yeah, no, it's. I definitely think it's a necessary chapter because, like Percy said, if it can almost make Annabeth stumble, like what other like weaker willed, campers are going to fall for that, for that image of maybe a perfect world, what they might think is a perfect world. Hummus is very good. I have chickpeas and I've been meaning to make hummus, but I will do that sometime eventually, hopefully. Chapter 14. We meet the Sheep of Doom. When you think Monster Island, you think craggy rocks and bones scattered on the beach like the island of the sirens. The Cyclops' island was nothing like that. I mean, okay, it had a rope bridge across a chasm, which is not a good sign. You might as well put up a billboard that says, "Something evil lives here." But except for that, the place looked like a Caribbean postcard. It had green fields and tropical fruit trees and white beaches. As we sailed towards the shore, Annabeth breathed in the sweet air. "The fleece," she said. I nodded. I couldn't see the fleece yet, but I could feel its power. I could believe it would heal anything, even Thalia's poison tree. If we take it away, will the island die? Annabeth shook her head. It'll fade. Go back to what it would be normally, whatever that is. I felt a little guilty about ruining this paradise, but I reminded myself we had no choice. Camp Half-Blood was in trouble, and Tyson. Tyson would still be with us if it wasn't for this quest. In the meadow at the base of the ravine, several dozen sheep were milling around. They looked peaceful enough, but they were huge, the size of hippos. Just past them was a path that led up into the hills. At the top of the path, near the edge of the canyon, was the massive oak tree I'd seen in my dreams. Something gold glittered in its branches. This is too easy, I said. Could we just hike up there and take it? Annabeth's eyes narrowed. There's supposed to be a guardian, a dragon, or... That's when a deer emerged from the bushes. It trotted into the meadow, probably looking for grass to eat, when the sheep all bleated at once and rushed the animal. It happened so fast that the deer stumbled and was lost in a sea of wool and trampling hooves. Grass and tufts of fur flew into the air. A second later, the sheep all moved away, back to their regular, peaceful wandering. Where the sheep had been was a pile of clean white bones. Annabeth and I exchanged looks. They're like piranhas, she said. Piranhas with wool. How will we... Percy! Annabeth gasped, grabbing my arm. Look! She pointed down the beach to just below the sheep meadow, where a small boat had been run aground, the other lifeboat of the CSS Birmingham. We decided there was no way we could get past the man-eating sheep. Annabeth wanted to sneak up the pass invisibly and grab the fleece, but in the end I convinced her that something would go wrong. The sheep would smell her. Another guardian would appear. Something. And if that happened, I'd be too far away to help. Besides, our first job was to find Grover and whoever had come ashore in that lifeboat, assuming they'd gotten past the sheep. I was too nervous to say what I was secretly hoping. That Tyson might be alive. We moored the Queen Anne's Revenge onto the back side of the island where the cliffs rode straight up for a good 200 feet. I figured the ship was less likely to be seen there. The cliffs looked climbable, barely, about as difficult as the lava wall back at camp. At least it was free of sheep. I hoped that Polyphemus did not also keep carnivorous mountain goats. We rowed a lifeboat to the edge of the rocks and made our way up very slowly. Annabeth went first because she was the better climber. We only came close to dying 6 or 7 times, which I thought was pretty good. Once, I lost my grip and I found myself dangling by one hand from a ledge 50 feet above the rocky surf. But I found another handhold and kept climbing. A minute later, Annabeth hit a slippery patch of moss and her foot slipped. Fortunately, she found something else to put it against. Unfortunately, that something was my face. Sorry, she murmured. It's okay, I grunted, though I'd never really wanted to know what Annabeth's sneaker tasted like. Finally, when my fingers felt like molten lead and my arm muscles were shaking from exhaustion, we hauled ourselves over the top of the cliff and collapsed. Ugh, I said. Ouch, moaned Annabeth. Ah, bellowed another voice. If I hadn't been so tired, I would have leaped another 200 feet. I whirled around, but I couldn't see who'd spoken. Annabeth clamped her hand over my mouth. She pointed. The ledge we were sitting on was narrower than I realized. It dropped off on the other side, and that's where the voice was coming from, right below us. You're a feisty one, the deep voice bellowed. Challenge me, Clarice's voice, no doubt about it. Give me back my sword, and I'll fight you. The monster roared with laughter. Annabeth and I crept to the edge. We were right above the entrance to the Cyclops' cave. Below us stood Polyphemus and Grover, still in his wedding dress. Clarice was tied up, hanging upside down over a pot of boiling water. I'd have hoped to see Tyson down there, too. Even if he'd been in danger, at least I would have known he was alive, but there was no sign of him. Polyphemus pondered. Eat loudmouth girl now, or wait for wedding feast? What does my bride think? He turned to Grover, who backed up and almost tripped over his completed bridal train. Oh, I'm not hungry right now, dear. Perhaps... Did you say bride? Clarice demanded. Who? Grover? Next to me, Annabeth muttered. Shut up. She has to shut up. Polyphemus glowered. What Grover? The satyr, Clarice yelled. Oh, Grover yelped. The poor thing's brain is boiling from that hot water. Pull her down, dear. Polyphemus' eyelids narrowed over his baleful milky eye, as if he were trying to see Clarice more clearly. The Cyclops was an even more horrible sight than he had been in my dreams. Partly because his rancid smell was now up close and personal. Partly because he was dressed in his wedding outfit, a crude kilt and shoulder wraps, stitched together from baby blue tuxedo as if he'd skinned the entire wedding party. What satyr? Asked Polyphemus. Satyrs are good eating. You bring me a satyr? No, you big idiot, bellowed Clarice. That satyr, Grover, the one in the wedding dress. Why, I oughta... Clarice! I hate her. Oh my gosh. I wanted to wring Clarice's neck, but it was too late. All I could do was watch as Polyphemus turned and ripped off Grover's wedding veil, revealing his curly hair, his scruffy adolescent beard, and his tiny horns. Polyphemus breathed heavily, trying to contain his anger. I don't see very well, he growled, not since many years ago when the other hero stabbed me in eye. But you're no lady Cyclops. The Cyclops grabbed Grover's dress and tore it away. I hate Clarice, though. Let it be known. Can we all collectively punch her in the throat? Yes. Yes. Because, like, she doesn't even have the tact to just be like, oh, this is keeping Grover alive, you know? Underneath, the old Grover reappeared in his jeans and t-shirt. He yelped and ducked as the monster swiped over his head. Stop, Grover pleaded. Don't eat me raw. I have a good recipe. I reached for my sword, but Annabeth hissed, Wait! Polyphemus was hesitating, a boulder in his hand, ready to smash his would-be bride. Recipe? He asked Grover. Oh, yes. You don't want to eat me raw. You'll get E. coli and botulism and all sorts of horrible things. I'd taste much better grilled over a slow fire with mango chutney. You could go get some mangoes right now, down there in the woods. I'll just wait here. The monster pondered this. My heart hammered against my ribs. I figured I'd die if I charged, but I couldn't let the monster kill Grover. Grilled satyr with mango chutney, Polyphemus mused. He looked back at Clarice, still hanging over the pot of boiling water. You a satyr too? No, you overgrown pile of dung, she yelled. I'm a girl, the daughter of Ares. Now untie me so I can rip your arms off. Rip my arms off, Polyphemus repeated. And stuff them down your throat. He got spunk. Let me down. Polyphemus snatched up Grover as if he were a wayward puppy. Have to graze sheep now. Wedding postponed until tonight. Then we'll eat satyr for the main course. But you're still getting married? Grover sounded hurt. Who's the bride? Polyphemus looked straight at the boiling pot. Clarice made a strangled noise. Oh no, you can't be serious. I'm not. Before Annabeth or I could do anything, Polyphemus plucked her off the rope like she was a ripe apple and tossed her and Grover deep into the cave. Make yourself comfortable. I come back at sundown for big event. Then the Cyclops whistled, and a mixed flock of goats and sheep, smaller than the man-eaters, fluttered out of the cave and past their master. As they went to pasture, Polyphemus patted some of the back and called them by name. Beltbuster, Tammany, Lockhart, etc. When the last sheep had waddled out, Polyphemus rolled a boulder in front of the doorway as easily as I would close a refrigerator door, shutting off the sound of Clarice and Grover screaming inside. Mangoes, Polyphemus grumbled to himself. What are mangoes? He strolled off down the mountain in his baby blue groom's outfit, leaving us alone with a pot of boiling water and a 6-ton boulder. We tried for what seemed like hours, but it was no good. The boulder wouldn't move. We yelled into the cracks, tapped on the rocks, did everything we could think of to get a signal to Grover, but if he heard us, we couldn't tell. Even if by some miracle we managed to kill Polyphemus, it wouldn't do us any good. Grover and Clarice would die inside that sealed cave. The only way to move the rock was to have the Cyclops do it. In total frustration, I stabbed Riptide against the boulder. Sparks flew, but nothing else happened. A large rock is not the kind of enemy you can fight with a magic sword. Annabeth and I sat on the ridge in despair and watched the distant baby blue shape of the Cyclops as he moved among his flock. He had wisely divided his regular animals from his man-eating sheep, pitting each group on either side of the huge crevice that divided the island. The only way across was the rope bridge, and the planks were much too far apart for sheep hooves. We watched as Polyphemus visited his carnivorous flock on the far side. Unfortunately, they didn't eat him. In fact, they didn't seem to bother him at all. He fed them chunks of mystery meat from a great wicker basket, which only reinforced the feeling I'd been having since Circe turned me into a guinea pig. That maybe it was time I joined Grover and became a vegetarian. Trickery, Annabeth decided. We can't beat him by force, so we'll have to use trickery. Okay, I said. What trick? I haven't figured that part out yet. Great. Polyphemus will have to move the rock to let the sheep inside. At sunset, I said, which is when he'll marry Clarice and have Grover for dinner. I'm not sure which is grosser. I could get inside, she said, invisibly. What about me? The sheep, Annabeth mused. She gave me one of those sly looks that made me wary. How much do you like sheep? Don't let go, Annabeth said, standing invisibly somewhere off to my right. That was easy for her to say. She wasn't hanging upside down from the belly of a sheep. Now, I'll admit it wasn't as hard as I'd thought. I'd crawled under a car before to change my mom's oil, and this wasn't too different. The sheep didn't care. Even the Cyclops' smallest sheep were big enough to support my weight, and they had thick wool. I just twirled the stuff into handles for my hands, hooked my feet against the sheep's thigh bones, and presto. I felt like a baby wallaby riding around against the sheep's chest, trying to keep the wool out of my mouth and my nose. That's so cute. In case you're wondering, the underside of a sheep doesn't smell that great. Imagine a winter sweater that's been dragged through the mud and left in the laundry hamper for a week. Something like that. The sun was going down. No sooner was I in position than the Cyclops roared, "Oi, goaties, sheepies!" The flock dutifully began trudging back up the slopes towards the cave. "This is it," Annabeth whispered. "I'll be close by, don't worry." I made a silent promise to the gods that if we survived this, I'd tell Annabeth she was a genius. The frightening thing was, I knew the gods would hold me to it. My sheep taxi started plodding up the hill. After 100 yards, my hand and feet started to hurt from holding on. I gripped the sheep's wool more tightly, and the animal made a grumbling sound. I didn't blame it. I wouldn't want anyone rock climbing in my hair either. But if I didn't hold on, I was sure I'd fall off right there in front of the monster. "Has enough fur," the Cyclops said, patting one of the sheep in front of me. "Einstein? Widget? Hey there, Widget." Polyphemus patted my sheep and nearly knocked me to the ground. "Putting on some extra mutton there? Uh-oh," I thought. "Here it comes." But Polyphemus just laughed and swatted the sheep's rear end, propelling us forward. "Go on, fatty. Soon Polyphemus will eat you for breakfast." And just like that, I was in the cave. I could see the last of the sheep coming inside. If Annabeth didn't pull off her distraction soon. The Cyclops was about to roll the stone back into place when from somewhere outside Annabeth shouted, "Hello, ugly!" Polyphemus stiffened. "Who said that?" "Nobody!" Annabeth yelled. That got exactly the reaction she'd been hoping for. The monster's face turned red with rage. "Nobody!" Polyphemus yelled back. "I remember you." "You're too stupid to remember anyone," Annabeth taunted, much less nobody. I hoped to the gods she was already moving when she said that, because Polyphemus bellowed furiously, grabbed the nearest boulder, which happened to be his front door, and threw it towards the sound of Annabeth's voice. I heard the rock smash into 1,000 fragments. For a terrible moment, there was silence. Then Annabeth shouted, "You haven't learned to throw any better, either." Polyphemus howled, "Come here, let me kill you, nobody." "You can't kill nobody, you stupid oaf," she taunted. "Come find me." Polyphemus barreled down the hill towards her voice. Now, the nobody thing wouldn't have made sense to anybody, but Annabeth had explained to me that it was the name Odysseus had used to trick Polyphemus centuries ago, right before he poked the Cyclopses out with a large hot stick. Annabeth had figured Polyphemus would still have a grudge about that name, and she was right. In his frenzy to find his old enemy, he forgot about resealing the cave entrance. Apparently, he didn't even stop to consider that Annabeth's voice was female, whereas the first nobody had been male. On the other hand, he'd wanted to marry Grover, so he couldn't have been all that bright about the whole male-female thing. I just hoped Annabeth could stay alive and keep distracting him long enough for me to find Grover and Clarice. I dropped off my ride, patted Widget on the head, and apologized. I searched the main room, but there was no sign of Grover or Clarice. I pushed through the crowd of sheep and goats towards the back of the cave. Even though I dreamed about this place, I had a hard time finding my way through the maze. I ran down corridors littered with bones, past rooms full of sheepskins, rugs, and life-size cement sheep I recognized as the work of Medusa. There were collections of sheep t-shirts, large tubs of lanolin cream, and woolly coats, socks, and hats with ram's horns. Finally, I found the spinning room, where Grover was huddled in the corner, trying to cut Clarice's bonds with a pair of safety scissors. "And it's no good," Clarice said. "This rope is like iron. Just a few more minutes." "Grover," she cried, exasperated, "you've been working at it for hours." And then they saw me. "Percy?" Clarice said. "You're supposed to be blown up." "Good to see you, too. Now, hold on while I—" "Percy!" Grover bleated and tackled me with a goat hug. "You heard me! You came!" "Yeah, buddy," I said. "Of course I came." "Where's Annabeth?" "Outside," I said. "But there's no time to talk. Clarice, hold still." I uncapped Riptide and sliced off her ropes. She stood stiffly, rubbing her wrists. She glared at me for a moment, then looked at the ground and mumbled, "Thanks." "You're welcome," I said. "Now, was anyone else on board your lifeboat?" Clarice looked surprised. "No, just me. Everybody else aboard the Birmingham. Well, I didn't even know you guys made it out." I looked down, trying not to believe that my last hope of seeing Tyson alive had just been crushed. Okay, come on then. We have to help. An explosion echoed through the cave, followed by a scream that told me we might be too late. It was Annabeth crying out in fear. Okay. Oh my gosh, that's the end of chapter 14. Dang. Okay. Yeah, Cyclops, he doesn't seem to be too bright. So, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. Uh, poor Annabeth, though. She's being so brave by low-key facing this Cyclops, like, head on. Like, I'm really, really proud of her for facing her fear. This is not one of her only fears we will deal with in this series, but man, a Cyclops, I would also be terrified if that was the case. If it was like a Cyclops that sounded like the person I wanted them to sound like, telling me they're proud of me or they love me or something like that, I would fall for that. I think I would, especially Annabeth at 7. She is so gosh darn brave. Chapter 15. Nobody gets the fleece. I got nobody, Polyphemus gloated. We crept to the cave entrance and saw the Cyclops grinning wickedly, holding up empty air. The monster shook his fist, and a baseball cap fluttered to the ground. There was Annabeth, hanging upside down by her legs. Ha, the Cyclops said. Nasty invisible girl. Already got feisty one for wife. Means you gotta be grilled with mango chutney. The mango chutney cracks me up. Annabeth struggled, but she looked dazed. She had a nasty cut on her forehead, and her eyes were glassy. I'll rush him, I whispered to Clarice. Our ship is around the back of the island. You and Grover, no way, they said at the same time. Clarice had armed herself with a highly collectible ram's horn spear from the Cyclops' cave. Grover had found a sheep's thigh bone, which he didn't look too happy about, but was gripping it like a club, ready to attack. We'll take him together, Clarice growled. Yeah, Grover said. Then he blinked, like he couldn't believe he'd just agree with Clarice about something. All right, I said. Attack Plan Macedonia. They nodded. We'd all taken the same training courses at Camp Half-Blood. They knew what I was talking about. They would sneak around either side and attack the Cyclops from the flanks while I held his attention in the front. Probably what this meant was that we'd all die instead of just me, but I was grateful for the help. I hefted my sword and shouted, Hey, ugly! The giant whirled towards me. Another one? Who are you? Put down my friend. I'm the one who insulted you. You are nobody? That's right, you smelly bucket of nose drool. It didn't sound quite as good as Annabeth's insult, but it was all I could think of. I'm nobody, and I'm proud of it. Now put her down and get over here. I want to stab your eye out again. Roar, he bellowed. The good news, he dropped Annabeth. The bad news, he dropped her head first onto the rocks, where she laid motionless as a rag doll. The other bad news, Polyphemus barreled toward me, 1,000 smelly pounds of Cyclops that I would have to fight with a very small sword. For Pan! Grover rushed in from the right. He threw a sheep bone, which bounced harmlessly off the monster's forehead. Clarice ran in from the left and set her spear against the side just in time for the Cyclops to step on it. He wailed in pain, and Clarice dove out of the way to avoid getting trampled. But the Cyclops just plucked out the shaft like a large splinter and kept advancing on me. I moved in with Riptide. The monster made a grab for me. I rolled aside and stabbed him in the thigh. I was hoping to see him disintegrate, but this monster was much too big and powerful. Get Annabeth! I yelled at Grover. He rushed over, grabbed her invincibility cap, and picked her up while Clarice and I tried to keep Polyphemus distracted. I have to admit, Clarice was brave. She charged the Cyclops again and again. He pounded the ground, stomped at her, grabbed at her, but she was too quick. And as soon as she made an attack, I followed up by stabbing the monster in the toe or the ankle or the hand. But we couldn't keep this up forever. Eventually we would tire or the monster would get us in a lucky shot. It would only take one hit to kill us. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Grover carrying Annabeth across the rope bridge. It wouldn't have been my first choice, given the man-eating sheep on the other side, but at the moment that looked better than this side of the chasm, and it gave me an idea. Fall back, I told Clarice. She rolled away as the Cyclops' fist smashed the olive tree beside her. We ran for the bridge, Polyphemus right behind us. He was cut up and hobbling from so many wounds, but all we'd done is slow him down and make him mad. Grind you into sheep chow, he promised. 1,000 curses on nobody. Faster, I told Clarice. We tore down the hill. The bridge was our only chance. Grover had just made it to the other side and was setting Annabeth down. We had to make it across, too, before the giant caught us. Grover, I yelled, get Annabeth's knife. His eyes widened as he saw the Cyclops behind us, but he nodded like he understood. As Clarice and I scrambled across the bridge, Grover began sawing at the ropes. The first strand went snap. Polyphemus bounded after us, making the bridge sway wildly. The ropes were now half cut. Clarice and I dove for solid ground, landing beside Grover. I made a wild slash with my sword and cut the remaining ropes. The bridge fell away into the chasm, and the Cyclops howled, with delight, because he was standing right next to us. How did he... What? Failed, he yelled gleefully. Nobody failed. Clarice and Grover tried to charge him, but the monster swatted them aside like flies. My anger swelled. I couldn't believe I'd come this far, lost Tyson, suffered through so much, only to fail. Stopped by a big stupid monster in a baby blue tuxedo kilt. Nobody was going to swat down my friends like that. I mean, nobody. Not nobody. Nah, you know what I mean. Strength coursed through my body. I raised my sword and attacked, forgetting I was hopelessly outmatched. I jabbed the Cyclops in the belly. When he doubled over, I smacked him in the nose with the hilt of my sword. I slashed and kicked and bashed until the next thing I knew, Polyphemus was sprawled on his back, dazed and groaning, and I stood above him, the tip of my sword hovering over his eye. Polyphemus moaned. Percy! Grover gasped. How did you... Please, no. The Cyclops moaned, pitifully staring up at me. His nose was bleeding. A tear welled up in the corner of his half-blind eye. My sheepies need me. Only trying to protect my sheep. He began to sob. I had won. All I had to do was stab. One quick stroke. Kill him! Clarice yelled. What are you waiting for? The Cyclops sounded so heartbroken. Just like Tyson. He's a Cyclops, Grover warned. Don't trust him. I knew he was right. I knew Annabeth would have said the same thing. But Polyphemus sobbed, and for the first time it sank in that he was a son of Poseidon too. Like Tyson. Like me. How could I just kill him in cold blood? We only want the fleece, I told the monster. Will you agree to let us take it? No, Clarice shouted. Kill him! The monster sniffed. My beautiful fleece. Prize of my collection. Take it, cruel human. Take it and go in peace. I'm going to step back slowly, I told the monster. One false move. Polyphemus nodded like he understood. I stepped back, and as fast as a cobra, Polyphemus smacked me to the edge of the cliff. Foolish mortal, he bellowed, rising to his feet. Take my fleece? Ha! I eat you first. He opened his enormous mouth, and I knew that his rotten molars were the last things I would ever see. Something went whoosh over my head, and thump. A rock the size of a basketball sailed into Polyphemus' throat, a beautiful three-pointer, nothing but net. The Cyclops choked, trying to swallow the unexpected pill. He staggered backwards, but there was no place to stagger. His heel slipped, the edge of the cliff crumbled, and the great Polyphemus made chicken wing motions that did nothing but to help him fly as he tumbled into the chasm. I turned. Halfway down the path to the beach, standing completely unharmed in the midst of a flock of killer sheep, was an old friend. Bad Polyphemus, Tyson said. Not all Cyclops are as nice as we look. Stop. I'm gonna cry. Guys, he's back. My heart. I'm so happy. Tyson gave us the short version. Rainbow the hippocampus, who'd apparently been following us ever since Long Island Sound, waiting for Tyson to play with him, had found Tyson sinking beneath the wreckage of the SS Birmingham and pulled him to safety. He and Tyson had been searching the Sea of Monsters ever since, trying to find us, until Tyson caught the scent of sheep and found this island. I wanted to hug the big oaf, except he was standing in the middle of killer sheep. Tyson, thank the gods! Annabeth is hurt. You thank the gods she is hurt? He asked, puzzled. No! I knelt beside Annabeth and was worried sick by what I saw. The gash on her forehead was worse than I'd realized. Her hairline was sticky with blood. Her skin was pale and clammy. Grover and I exchanged nervous looks. Then an idea came to me. Tyson, the fleece. Can you get it for me? Which one? Tyson said, looking around at the hundreds of sheep. In the tree, I said. The golden one. Ooh, pretty. Yes. Tyson lumbered over, careful not to step on any of the sheep. If any of us had tried to approach the fleece, we would have been eaten alive. But I guess Tyson smelled like Polyphemus, 'cause the flock didn't bother him at all. They just cuddled up to him and bleated affectionately, as though they expected to get sheep treats from the big wicker basket. Tyson reached up and lifted the fleece off its branch. Immediately the leaves on the oak tree turned yellow. Tyson started wading back towards me, but I yelled, "No time! Throw it!" The gold ram skin sailed through the air like a glittering shag frisbee. I caught it with a grunt. It was heavier than I expected. 60 or 70 pounds of precious gold wool. I spread it over Annabeth, covering everything but her face, and prayed silently to all the gods I could think of, even the ones I didn't like. Please, please. The color returned to her face. Her eyelids fluttered open. The cut on her forehead began to close. She saw Grover and said weakly, "You're not married?" Grover grinned. "No, my friends talked me out of it." "Annabeth," I said, "just lay still." But despite our protests, she sat up, and I noticed that the cut on her face was almost completely healed. She looked a lot better. In fact, she shimmered with health, as if someone had injected her with glitter. Meanwhile, Tyson was starting to have trouble with the sheep. "Down," he told them as they were climbing him. "Down," he told them as they tried to climb him looking for food. A few were sniffing in our direction. "No, sheepies, this way, come here." They heeded him, but it was obvious they were hungry, and they were starting to realize Tyson didn't have any treats for them. They wouldn't hold out forever with so much fresh meat nearby. "We have to go," I said. "Our ship is—" The Queensland's Revenge was a very long way away. The shortest route was across the chasm, and we just destroyed the only bridge. The only other possibility was through the sheep. "Tyson," I called, "can you lead the flock as far away as possible? The sheep want food." "I know. They want people food. Just lead them away from the path. Give us time to get to the beach. Then join us there." Tyson looked doubtful, but he whistled. "Come, sheepies. People food this way." He jogged off into the meadow, the sheep in pursuit. "Keep the fleece around you," I told Annabeth, "just in case you're not fully healed yet." "Can you stand?" She tried, but her face turned pale again. "Oh, not fully healed." Clarice dropped next to her and felt her chest, which made Annabeth gasp. "Ribs broken," Clarice said. "They're mending, but definitely broken." "How can you tell?" I asked. Clarice glared at me. "Because I've broken a few, runt. I'll have to carry her." Before I could argue, Clarice picked up Annabeth like a sack of flour and lugged her down the beach. Grover and I followed. As soon as we got to the edge of the water, I concentrated on the Queen Anne's Revenge. I willed it to raise anchor and come towards me. After a few anxious minutes, I saw the ship rounding the tip of the island. "Incoming!" Tyson yelled. He was bounding down the path to meet us, the sheep about 50 yards behind, bleating in frustration as their Cyclops friend ran away without feeding them. "They probably won't follow us into the water," I told the others. "All we have to do is swim for the ship." "With Annabeth like this?" Clarice protested. "We can do it," I insisted. I was starting to feel confident again. I was back in my home turf, the sea. Once we get to the ship, we're home free. We almost made it, too. We were just wading past the entrance to the ravine when we heard a tremendous roar and saw Polyphemus, scraped up and bruised, but still very much alive, his baby blue wedding outfit in tatters, splashing towards us with a boulder in each hand. That's the end of chapter 15. Chapter 16. I go down with the ship. "You'd think he'd run out of rocks," I muttered. "Swim for it," Grover said. He and Clarice plunged into the surf. Annabeth hung onto Clarice's neck and tried to paddle with one hand, the wet fleece weighing her down. But the Cyclops' attention wasn't on the fleece. "You, young Cyclops!" Polyphemus roared. "Traitor to your kind!" Tyson froze. "Don't listen to him," I pleaded. "Come on." I pulled Tyson's arm, but I might as well have been pulling a mountain. He turned and faced the older Cyclops. "I am not a traitor." "You serve mortals!" Polyphemus shouted. "Thieving humans!" Polyphemus threw his first boulder. Tyson swatted it aside with his fist. "Not a traitor," Tyson said, "and you are not my kind." "Death or victory!" Polyphemus charged into the surf, but his foot was still wounded. He immediately stumbled and fell on his face. That would have been funny, except he started to get up again, spitting salt water and growling. "Percy!" Clarice yelled. "Come on!" They were almost to the ship with the fleece. If I could just keep the monster distracted a little longer. "Go," Tyson told me. "I will hold Big Ugly." "No, he'll kill you." I'd already lost Tyson once. I wasn't going to lose him again. "We'll fight him together." "Together," Tyson agreed. I drew my sword. Polyphemus advanced carefully, limping worse than ever, but there was nothing wrong with his throwing arm. He chucked his second boulder. I dove to one side, but I still would have been squashed if Tyson's fist hadn't blasted the rock to rubble. I willed the sea to rise. A 20-foot wave surged up, lifting me on its crest. I rode towards the Cyclops, and I kicked him in the eye, leaping over his head as the water blasted him onto the beach. "Destroy you!" Polyphemus spluttered. "Fleece stealer!" "You stole the fleece!" I yelled. "You've been using it to lure satyrs to their deaths." "So? Satyrs good eating. The fleece should be used to heal. It belongs to the children of the gods." "I am a child of the gods." Polyphemus swiped at me, but I sidestepped. "Father Poseidon, curse this thief." He was blinking hard now, like he could barely see, and I realized he was targeting by the sound of my voice. "Poseidon won't curse me," I said, backing up as the Cyclops grabbed air. "I'm his son, too. He won't play favorites." Polyphemus roared. He ripped an olive tree out of the side of the cliff and smashed it where I had been standing a moment before. "Humans not the same. Nasty, tricky, lying." Grover was helping Annabeth aboard the ship, and Clarice was waving frantically at me, telling me to come on. Tyson worked his way around Polyphemus, trying to get behind him. "Young one," the older Cyclops called. "Where are you? Help me!" Tyson stopped. "You weren't raised right," Polyphemus wailed, shaking his olive tree club. "Poor orphan brother! Help me!" No one moved. No sound but the ocean and my own heartbeat. Then Tyson stepped forward, raising his hands defensively. "Don't fight, Cyclops brother. Put down the—" Polyphemus spun towards his voice. "Tyson!" I shouted. The tree struck him with such force it would have flattened me into a Percy pizza with extra olives. Tyson flew backwards, plowing a trench into the sand. Polyphemus charged after him, but I shouted, "No!" and lunged as far as I could with Riptide. I was hoping to sting Polyphemus in the back of the thigh, but I managed to leap a little bit higher. "Blah!" Polyphemus bleated just like a sheep and swung at me with his tree. I dove, but still got raked across the back by a dozen jagged branches. I was bleeding and bruised and exhausted. The guinea pig in me wanted me to bolt. But I swallowed down my fear. Polyphemus struck the tree again, but this time I was ready. I grabbed a branch as it passed, ignoring the pain in my hand as I was jerked skyward, and let the Cyclops lift me into the air. At the top of the arc, I let go and fell straight against the giant's face, landing with both feet on his already damaged eye. Polyphemus yelled in pain. Tyson tackled him, pulling him down. I landed next to them, sword in hand, within striking distance of the monster's heart. But I locked eyes with Tyson, and I knew I couldn't do it. It just wasn't right. "Let him go," I told Tyson. "Run." With one last mighty effort, Tyson pushed the cursing older Cyclops away, and we ran for the surf. "I will smash you!" Polyphemus yelled, doubling over in pain, his enormous hands cupped over his eye. Tyson and I plunged into the waves. "Where are you?" Polyphemus screamed. He picked up his tree club and threw it into the water. It splashed off to our right. I summoned up a current to carry us, and we started gaining speed. I was beginning to think we might make it to the ship when Clarice shouted from the deck, "Yeah, Jackson! In your face, Cyclops!" "Shut up!" I wanted to yell. "Rah!" Polyphemus picked up a boulder. He threw it towards the sound of Clarice's voice, but it fell short, narrowly missing Tyson and me. Yeah, Clarice taunted. "You throw like a wimp. Teach you to try marrying me, you idiot." "Clarice!" I yelled, unable to stand it. "Shut up!" Too late. Polyphemus threw another boulder, and this time I watched helplessly as it sailed over my head and crashed to the hull of the Queen Anne's Revenge. You wouldn't believe how fast a ship can sink. The Queen Anne's Revenge creaked and groaned and listed forward like it was going down a playground slide. I cursed, willing the sea to push us faster, but the ship's masts were already going under. "Dive!" I told Tyson, and as another rock sailed over our heads, we plunged underwater. My friends were sinking fast, trying to swim, without luck, in the bubbly trails of the ship's wreckage. Not many people realize that when a ship goes down, it acts like a sinkhole, pulling down everything around it. Clarice was a strong swimmer, but even she wasn't making any progress. Grover frantically kicked with his hooves. Annabeth was hanging onto the fleece, which flashed in the water like a wave of new pennies. I swam towards them, knowing that I might not have the strength to pull my friends out. Worse, pieces of timber were swirling around them. None of my power with water would help if I got whacked on the head by a beam. "We need help," I thought. "Yes," Tyson's voice loud and clear in my head. I looked over at him, startled. I'd heard Nereids and other water spirits speak to me underwater before, but it never occurred to me. Tyson was a son of Poseidon. We could communicate with each other. "Rainbow," Tyson said. I nodded, then closed my eyes and concentrated, adding my voice to Tyson's. Rainbow, we need you. Immediately, shapes shimmered in the darkness below. 3 horses with fish tails, galloping upwards faster than dolphins. Rainbow and his friends glanced in our direction and seemed to read our thoughts. They whisked into the wreckage, and a moment later burst upwards in a cloud of bubbles. Grover, Annabeth, and Clarice each clinging to the neck of a hippocampus. Rainbow, the largest, had Clarice. He raced over to us and allowed Tyson to grab hold of his mane. His friend who bore Annabeth did the same for me. We broke the surface of the water and raced away from Polyphemus's island. Behind us, I could hear the Cyclops roaring in triumph. I did it! I finally sank nobody! I hoped he never found out he was wrong. We skimmed across the sea as the island shrank to a dot and then disappeared. Did it, Annabeth muttered in exhaustion. She slumped against the neck of the hippocampus and instantly fell asleep. I didn't know how far the hippocampi would take us. I didn't know where we were going. I just propped up Annabeth so she wouldn't fall off, covered her in the golden fleece that we'd been through so much to get, and said a silent prayer of thanks. Which reminded me, I still owed the gods a debt. You're a genius, I told Annabeth quietly. Then I put my head against the fleece, and before I knew it, I was asleep too. Can I get a shut up Clarice in chat? Because, does she not understand? Clarice to me is which, I mean, maybe this is Ares himself, but I feel like his children at least, this is the brain over brawn type of thing, but they're brawn over brain. They are not smart. They are very much we're fighters, we're here to mess people up. That's it. They might think a little bit, but not very much. They are just trying to pummel people or be mean to people. And it just is not good. Is that shout out to Clarice? Thank you for the shout out to Clarice. Shout out Clarice. But yeah, so that was chapter 16. That was crazy. Thank you for putting Clarice in the corner, Idol. I appreciate that so much. Chapter 17. We got a surprise on the Miami beach. Percy, wake up. Salt water splashed my face. Annabeth was shaking my shoulder. In the distance, the sun was setting behind a city skyline. I could see a beachside highway lined with palm trees, storefront glowing with red and blue neon, a harbor filled with sailboats and cruise ships. Miami, I think, Annabeth said, but the hippocampi are acting funny. Sure enough, our fishy friends had slowed down and were whinnying and swimming in circles, sniffing the water. They didn't look happy. One of them sneezed. I could tell what they were thinking. This is as far as they'll take us, I said. Too many humans. Too much pollution. We'll have to swim to shore on our own. None of us was very psyched about that, but we thanked Rainbow and his friends for the ride. Tyson cried a little. He unfastened the makeshift saddle pack he'd made, which contained his toolkit and a couple of other things he'd salvaged from the Birmingham wreck. He hugged Rainbow around the neck, gave him a soggy mango he picked up on the island, and said goodbye. Once the hippocampi's white manes disappeared into the sea, we swam for shore. The waves pushed us forward, and in no time we were back in the mortal world. We wandered along the cruise line docks, pushing through crowds of people arriving for vacations. Porters bustled around with carts of luggage. Taxi drivers yelled at each other in Spanish and cut in line for customers. If anyone noticed 5 kids dripping wet, looking like they'd had a fight with a monster. They didn't let on. Now that we were back among mortals, Tyson's single eye had blurred from the mist. Grover had put on his cap and sneakers, and even the fleece had transformed from a sheepskin to a red and gold high school letter jacket with a large glittery omega in the pocket. Annabeth ran to the nearest newspaper box and checked the date on the Miami Herald. She cursed. June 18th! We've been away from camp 10 days. That's impossible, Clarice said. But I knew it wasn't. Time traveled differently in monstrous places. Dahlia's tree must almost be dead, Grover wailed. We have to get the fleece back tonight. Clarice slumped down on the pavement. How are we supposed to do that? Her voice trembled. We're hundreds of miles away. No money, no ride. This is just like the Oracle said. It's your fault, Jackson. If you hadn't interfered, Percy's fault, Annabeth exploded. Clarice, how can you say that? You're the biggest... Stop it, I said. Clarice put her head in her hands. Annabeth stopped her foot in frustration. The thing was, I'd almost forgotten this quest was supposed to be Clarice's. For a scary moment, I saw things from her point of view. How would I feel if a bunch of other heroes had butted in and made me look bad? I thought about what I'd overheard of the boiler room of the CSS Birmingham. Aries yelling at Clarice, warning her that she better not fail. Aries couldn't care less about the camp, but if Clarice made him look bad. Clarice, I said, what did the oracle tell you exactly? She looked up. I thought she was going to tell me off, but instead she took a deep breath and recited her prophecy. You shall sail the iron ship with warriors of bone. You shall find what you seek and make it your own. But despair for your life entombed within stone, and fail without friends to fly home alone. Ouch, Grover mumbled. No, I said. Wait a moment. I got it. I searched my pockets for money, but found nothing but a golden drachma. Does anyone have any cash? Annabeth and Grover shook their heads morosely. Clarice pulled a wet Confederate dollar from her pocket and sighed. Cash? Tyson asked hesitantly. Like green paper? I looked at him. Yeah. Like the kind in duffel bags? Yeah, but we lost those bags days ago. I stuttered to a halt as Tyson rummaged in his saddlebag and pulled out the Ziploc bag full of cash that Hermes had included in our supplies. Tyson, I said, how did you? Thought it was a feed bag for Rainbow, he said. Found it floating in sea, but only paper inside. Sorry. He handed me the cash. 5s and 10s, at least $300. I ran to the curb and grabbed a taxi that was just letting out a family of cruise passengers. Clarice, I yelled. Come on, you're going to the airport. Annabeth, give her the fleece. I'm not sure which of them looked more stunned as I took the fleece leather jacket from Annabeth, tucked the cash into its pockets, and put it in Clarice's arms. Clarice said, You'd let me. It's your quest. I said, We only have enough money for one flight. Besides, I can't travel by air. Zeus would blast me to a million pieces. That's what the prophecy meant. You'd fail without friends, meaning you'd need our help, but you'd have to fly home alone. You have to get the fleece back safely. I could see her mind working, suspicious at first, wondering what trick I was playing, then finally deciding. I meant what I said. She jumped in the cab. You can count on me. I won't fail. Not failing would be good. The cab peeled out in the cloud of exhaust. The fleece was on its way. Percy, Annabeth said. That was so generous, Grover offered. Insane, Annabeth corrected. You're betting the lives of everybody at camp that Clarice will get the fleece safely back by tonight? It's her quest, I said. She deserves a chance. Percy is nice, Tyson said. Percy is too nice, Annabeth grumbled. But I couldn't help thinking that maybe, just maybe, she was a little impressed. I'd surprised her anyway, and that wasn't easy to do. Come on, I told my friends. Let's find another way home. That's when I turned and found a sword's point at my throat. Hey, cuz, said Luke. Welcome back to the States. His bearman thugs appeared on either side of us. One grabbed Annabeth and Grover by their t-shirt collars. The other tried to grab Tyson, but Tyson knocked him into a pile of luggage and roared at Luke. Percy, Luke said calmly, tell your giant to back down or I'll have Aureus bash your friend's head together. Aureus grinned and raised Annabeth and Grover off the ground, kicking and screaming. What do you want, Luke? I growled. He smiled, the scar rippling on the side of his face. He gestured toward the end of the dock, and I noticed what should have been obvious. The biggest boat in port was the Princess Andromeda. Why, Percy, Luke said. I want to extend my hospitality, of course. The Bear twins herded us aboard the Princess Andromeda. They drew us down the aft deck in front of the swimming pool with sparkling fountain that sprayed into the air. A dozen of Luke's assorted goons, snake people, Lastrygonians, demigods in battle armor, had gathered to watch us get some hospitality. And so, the fleece, Luke mused. Where is it? He looked us over, prodding my shirt with the tip of his shoulder, poking Grover's jeans. Hey, Grover yelled. That's real goat fur under there. Sorry, old friend, Luke smiled. Just give me the fleece, and I'll leave you to return to your, little nature quest. Blah, Grover protested. Some old friend. Maybe you didn't hear me. Luke's voice was dangerously calm. Where is the fleece? Not here, I said. I probably shouldn't have told him anything, but it felt good to throw the truth in his face. We sent it on ahead of us. You messed up. Luke's eyes narrowed. You're lying. You couldn't have... His face reddened as a horrible possibility occurred to him. Clarice? I nodded. You trusted... You gave... Yeah. Agrius? The bear giant flinched. Yes? Get below and prepare my steed. Bring it onto the deck. I need to fly to the Miami airport. Fast. But, boss, do it! Luke screamed, "or I'll feed you to the draken." The bear man gulped and lumbered down the stairs. Luke paced in front of the swimming pool, cursing in ancient Greek, gripping his sword so tight his knuckles turned white. The rest of Luke's crew looked uneasy. Maybe they'd never seen their boss so unhinged before. I started thinking, if I could use Luke's anger, get him to talk so everyone could hear how crazy his plans were. I looked at the swimming pool, at the fountain spraying mist in the air, making a rainbow in the sunset. And suddenly I had an idea. "You've been toying with us all along," I said. "You wanted us to bring you the fleece and save you the trouble of getting it." Luke scowled. "Of course, you idiot, and you've messed everything up." "Traitor!" I dug my last gold drachma out of my pocket and threw it at Luke. As expected, he dodged it easily. The coin sailed into the spray of rainbow-colored water. I hoped my prayer would be accepted in silence. I thought with all my heart, "O goddess, accept my offering." "You tricked us all!" I yelled at Luke. "Even Dionysus at Camp Half-Blood." Behind Luke, the fountain began to shimmer, but I needed everyone's attention on me, so I uncapped Riptide. Luke just sneered. "This is no time for heroics, Percy. Drop your puny little sword, or I'll have you killed sooner rather than later." "Who poisoned Thalia's tree, Luke?" "I did, of course," he snarled. "I already told you that. I used elder python venom, straight from the depths of Tartarus." "Chiron had nothing to do with it?" "Ha! You know he would never do that. The old fool wouldn't have the guts." "You call it guts? Betraying your friends? Endangering the whole camp?" Luke raised his sword. "You don't understand the half of it. I was going to let you take the fleece, once I was done with it." That made me hesitate. Why would he let me take the fleece? He must have been lying, but I couldn't afford to lose his attention. "You were going to heal Kronos," I said. "Yes, the fleece's magic would have sped up his mending process by tenfold, but you haven't stopped us, Percy. You've only slowed us down a little. And so you poisoned the tree. You betrayed Thalia. You set us up, all to help Kronos destroy the gods." Luke gritted his teeth. "You know that. Why do you keep asking me?" "Because I want everyone in the audience to hear you." "What audience?" Then his eyes narrowed. He looked behind him and his goons did the same. They gasped and stumbled back. Above the pool, shimmering in the rainbow mist, was an iris message vision of Dionysus, Tantalus, and the whole camp in the dining pavilion. They sat in stunned silence, watching us. "Well," said Dionysus dryly, "some unplanned dinner entertainment." "Mr. D, you heard him," I said. "You all heard Luke. The poisoning of the tree wasn't Chiron's fault." Mr. D sighed. "I suppose not." "The iris message could be a trick," Tantalus suggested, but his eyes was mostly on his cheeseburger, which he was trying to corner with both hands. "I fear not," Mr. D said, looking with distaste at Tantalus. "It appears I shall have to reinstate Chiron as activities director. I suppose I do miss the old horse's pinochle games." Tantalus grabbed the cheeseburger. It didn't bolt away from him. He lifted it from the plate and stared at it in amazement, as if it were the largest diamond in the world. "I got it!" he cackled. "We are no longer in need of your services, Tantalus," Mr. D announced. Tantalus looked stunned. "What? But you may return to the underworld. You are dismissed." "No, but... no!" As he dissolved into mist, his fingers clutched at the cheeseburger, trying to bring it to his mouth. But it was too late. He disappeared and the cheeseburger fell back onto its plate. The campers exploded in cheering. Luke bellowed with rage. He slashed his sword through the fountain and the iris message dissolved, but the deed was done. I was feeling pretty good about myself until Luke turned and gave me a murderous look. "Kronos was right, Percy. You're an unreliable weapon. You need to be replaced." I wasn't sure what he meant, but I didn't have time to think about it. One of his men blew a brass whistle, and the deck doors flew open. A dozen more warriors poured out, making a circle around us, the brass tips of their spears bristling. Luke smiled at me. "You'll never leave this boat alive." And that's chapter 17. That's crazy. Honestly, Percy? Okay. I think Luke is dumb, obviously. But I feel like at this point he's so... Yes, his daddy issues for sure. But I think he's also like so obsessed with this plan that he can't think of anything else, you know? He can't think of the minor details. He probably has like the bigger details figured out, you know? But I feel like he's missing what little can go wrong with it, hence why he didn't account for Clarice taking the fleece on the plane. Also, you know, Percy throwing a drachma at him, like, Like that's I don't know. I feel like he's underestimating so many people, and that's the real reason it's not going well for him. Kronos, no, Kronos is definitely manipulating him, and like, oh, I'm not. Mm, poor Luke. He's like Candace who wants to keep busting Phineas, aka Percy. No, literally, this is not. This is okay. Also, I will say that was very, very kind of Percy to be like, "Hey, Clarice, this is your mission, girl. Go turn that in. This is your quest." Like, that was incredibly nice. But at the same time, it also saved them by him being selfless and letting her take it. So, I guess it ended up working out. Whew. Okay. Chapter 18. The party ponies invade. The party ponies? Okay. 1-on-1, I challenged Luke. What are you afraid of? Luke curled his lip. The soldiers who were about to kill us hesitated, waiting for his order. Before he could say anything, Agrias, the bear man, busted onto the deck leading a flying horse. It was the first pure black Pegasus I'd ever seen, with wings like a giant raven. The Pegasus mare bucked and whinnied. I could understand her thoughts. She was calling Agrias and Luke names so bad Chirons would have washed her muzzle out with saddle soap. Sir, Agrias called, dodging a Pegasus hoof, your steed is ready. Luke kept his eyes on me. I told you last summer, Percy, he said. You can't bait me into a fight. And you keep avoiding one, I noticed. Scared your warriors will see you get whipped? Luke glanced at his men, and he saw I'd trapped him. If he'd back down now, he'd look weak. If he fought me, he'd lose valuable time chasing after Clarice. For my part, the best I could hope for was to distract him, giving my friends a chance to escape. If anyone could think of a plan to get them out of there, Annabeth could. On the downside, I knew how good Luke was at sword fighting. I'll kill you quickly, he decided, and raised his weapon. Backbiter was a foot longer than my own sword. Its blade glinted with an evil gray and gold light where the human steel had been melded with celestial bronze. I could almost feel the blade fighting against itself, like two opposite magnets bound together. I didn't know how the blade had been made, but I sensed a tragedy. Someone had died in the process. Luke whistled to one of his men, who threw him a round leather and bronze shield. He grinned at me wickedly. Luke, Annabeth said, at least give him a shield. Sorry, Annabeth, he said. You bring your own equipment to this party. The shield was a problem. Fighting two-handed with just a sword gives you more power, but fighting one-handed with the shield gives you more defense and versatility. There are more moves, more options, more ways to kill. I thought back to Chiron, who told me to stay at camp no matter what and learn to fight. Now I was going to pay for not listening to him. Luke lunged and almost killed me on his first try. His sword went under my arm, slashing through my shirt and grazing my ribs. I jumped back, then counteracted with Riptide, but Luke slammed my blade away with his shield. My Percy, Luke chided, you're out of practice. He came at me again with a swipe to the head. I parried, returned with the thrust. He sidestepped easily. The cut on my ribs stung. My heart was racing. When Luke lunged again, I jumped backwards into the swimming pool and felt a surge of strength. I spun underwater, creating a funnel cloud, and blasted out of the deep end straight at Luke's face. The force of the water knocked him down, sputtering and blinded. But before I could strike, he rolled aside and was on his feet again. I attacked and sliced off the edge with the shield, but that didn't even faze him. He dropped to a crouch and jabbed at my legs. Suddenly, my thigh was on fire. With the pain so intense I collapsed. My jeans were ripped above the knee. I was hurt. I didn't know how badly. Luke hacked downward and I rolled behind a deck chair. I tried to stand, but my leg wouldn't take the weight. Percy! Grover bleated. I rolled again as Luke's sword slashed the deck chair in half, metal pipes and all. I clawed towards the swimming pool, trying hard not to black out. I'd never make it. Luke knew it too. He advanced slowly, smiling. The edge of his sword was tinged with red. One thing I want you to watch before you die, Percy. He looked at the bear man Aureus, who was still holding Annabeth and Grover by the necks. You can eat your dinner now, Aureus. Bon appetit. The bear man lifted my friends and bared his teeth. That's when all Hades broke loose. Whish. A red-feathered arrow sprouted from Aureus's mouth, and with a surprised look on his hairy face, he crumpled to the deck. Brother! Argeus wailed. He let the Pegasus rein go, slack long just enough for the black steed to kick him in the head and fly away free over Miami Bay. For a split second, Luke's guards were too stunned to do anything except watch the bear twins' bodies dissolve into smoke. Then there was a wild chorus of war cries and hooves thundering against metal. A dozen centaurs charged out of the main stairwell. Ponies! Tyson cried with delight. My mind had trouble processing everything I saw. Chiron was among the crowd, but his relatives were almost nothing like him. There were centaurs with black Arabian stallion bodies, others with gold palomino coats, others with orange and white spots like paint horses. Some wore brightly colored t-shirts with day-glow letters that said Party Ponies South Florida Chapter. Some were armed with bows, some with baseball bats, some with paintball guns. One had his face paint like a Comanche warrior and was waving a large orange styrofoam hand, making a big number 1. Another was bare-chested and painted entirely green. A third had googly-eyed glasses with the eyeballs bouncing around on slinky coils, and one of those baseball caps with soda can and straw attachments on either side. They exploded onto the deck with such ferocity and color that even for a moment Luke was stunned. I couldn't tell whether they had come to celebrate or attack. Apparently both. As Luke was raising his sword to rally his troops, a centaur shot a custom-made arrow with a leather boxing glove on the end. It smacked Luke in the face and sent him crashing into the swimming pool. His warriors scattered. I couldn't blame them. Facing the hooves of a rearing stallion is scary enough, but when it's a centaur, armed with a bow and whooping it up in a soda-drinking hat, even the bravest warrior would retreat. "Come get some!" yelled one of the party ponies. They let loose with their paintball guns. A wave of blue and yellow exploded against Luke's warriors, blinding them and splattering them from head to toe. They tried to run, only to slip and fall. Chiron galloped towards Annabeth and Grover, neatly plucking them off the deck and depositing them on his back. I tried to get up, but my wounded leg still felt like it was on fire. Luke was crawling out of the pool. "Attack, you fools!" he ordered his troops. Somewhere down below deck, a large alarm bell thumped. I knew any second we would be swamped by Luke's reinforcements. Already, his warriors were getting over their surprise, coming at the centaurs with swords and spears drawn. Tyson slapped a half a dozen of them aside, knocking them over the guardrail into Miami Bay. But more warriors were coming up the stairs. "Withdraw, brethren," Chiron said. "You won't get away with this, horseman," Luke shouted. He raised his sword but got smacked in the face with another boxing glove arrow and sat down hard in a deck chair. Palomino Centaur hoisted me onto his back. "Dude, get your big friend." "Tyson," I yelled. "Come on." Tyson dropped the 2 warriors he was about to tie into a knot and jogged after us. He jumped on the centaur's back. "Dude," the centaur groaned, almost buckling under Tyson's weight. "Do the words low-carb diet mean anything to you?" Luke's warriors were organizing themselves into a phalanx, but by the time they were ready to advance, the centaurs had galloped to the edge of the deck and fearlessly jumped the guardrail, as if it were a steeplechase and not 10 stories above the ground. I was sure we were going to die. We plummeted towards the docks, but the centaurs hit the ground with hardly a jolt and galloped off, whooping and yelling taunts at the Princess Andromeda as we raced into the streets of downtown Miami. I have no idea what the Miamians thought of us as we galloped by. Streets and buildings began to blur as the centaurs picked up speed. It felt as if space were compacting, as if every centaur step took us miles and miles. In no time, we'd left the city behind. We raced through marshy fields of high grass and ponds and stunted trees. Finally, we found ourselves in a trailer park at the edge of a lake. The trailers were all horse trailers, tricked out with televisions and mini refrigerators and mosquito netting. We were in a centaur camp. "Dude," said a party pony as he unloaded his gear. "Did you see that bear guy? He was all like, 'Whoa, I have an arrow in my mouth.'" The centaur with the googly-eye glasses laughed. "That was awesome! Head slam!" The 2 centaurs charged at each other's full force and knocked head, then went staggering off in different directions with crazy grins on their face. Chiron sighed. He set Annabeth and Grover down on a picnic blanket next to me. "I really wish my cousins wouldn't slam their heads together. They don't have the brain cells to spare." "Chiron," I said, still stunned by the fact that he was here. "You saved us." He gave me a dry smile. "Well, now, I couldn't very well let you die, especially since you've cleared my name." "But how did you know where we were?" Annabeth asked. "Advanced planning, my dear. I figured you would wash up near Miami if you made it out of the Sea of Monsters alive. Almost everything strange washes up near Miami." "Gee, thanks," Grover mumbled. No, Chiron said. "I didn't mean—" "Oh, never mind. I am glad to see you, my young satyr. The point is, I was able to eavesdrop on Percy's Iris message and trace the signal. Iris and I have been friends for centuries. I asked her to alert me to any important communications in this area. Then it took no effort to convince my cousins to ride to your aid. As you see, centaurs can travel quite fast when we wish to. Distance for us is not the same as distance for humans." I looked over at the campfire, where 3 party ponies were teaching Tyson to operate a paintball gun. I hoped they knew what they were getting into. "So, what now?" I asked Chiron. "We just let Luke sail away? He's got Kronos aboard that ship, or parts of him anyway." Chiron knelt. carefully folding his front legs underneath him. He opened the medicine pouch in his belt and started to treat my wounds. I'm afraid, Percy, that today has been something of a draw. We didn't have the strength of numbers to take that ship. Luke was not organized enough to pursue us. Nobody won. But we got the fleece, Annabeth said. Clarice is on her way back to camp with it right now. Chiron nodded, though he still looked uneasy. You are all true heroes. And as soon as we get Percy fixed up, you must return to Half-Blood Hill. The centaur shall carry you. You're coming too? I asked. Oh yes, Percy. I'll be relieved to get home. My brethren here simply do not appreciate Dean Martin's music. Besides, I must have some words with Mr. D. There is the rest of the summer to plan. So much training to do. And I want to see. I'm curious about the fleece. I didn't know exactly what he meant, but it made me worried about what Luke had said. I was going to let you take the fleece, once I was done with it. Had he just been lying? I'd learned with Kronos there was usually a plan within a plan. The Titan Lord wasn't called the Crooked One for nothing. He had ways of getting people to do what he wanted without them ever realizing his true intentions. Over by the campfire, Tyson let loose with this paintball gun. A blue projectile splattered against one of the centaurs, hurling him back into the lake. The centaur came up grinning, covered in swamp muck and blue paint, and gave Tyson 2 thumbs up. Annabeth, Chiron said, perhaps you and Grover would go supervise Tyson and my cousins before they, teach each other too many bad habits? Annabeth met his eyes. Some kind of understanding passed between them. Sure, Chiron, Annabeth said. Come on, goat boy. But I don't like paintball. Yes, you do. She hoisted Grover to his hooves and led them off towards the campfire. Chiron finished bandaging my leg. Percy, I had a talk with Annabeth on the way here. A talk about the prophecy. Uh-oh, I thought. It wasn't her fault, I said. I made her tell me. His eyes flickered with irritation. I was sure he was going to chew me out, but then his look turned to weariness. I suppose I could not expect to keep it secret forever. So, am I the one in the prophecy? Chiron tucked his bandages back into his pouch. I wish I knew, Percy. You're not yet 16. For now we must simply train you as best we can, and leave the future to the fates. The fates. I hadn't thought about those old ladies in a long time, but as soon as Chiron mentioned them, something clicked. That's what it meant, I said. Chiron frowned. That's what meant? Last summer, the omen from the fates, when I saw them snip someone's life string. I thought it meant I was going to die right away, but it's worse than that. It's got something to do with your prophecy. The death they foretold, it's gonna happen when I'm 16. Chiron's tail whisked nervously in the grass. My boy, you can't be sure of that. We don't even know if the prophecy is about you. But there isn't any other half-blood child in the Big Three, that we know of. And Kronos is rising. He's going to destroy Mount Olympus. He will try, Chiron agreed, and Western civilization along with it if we don't stop him. But we will stop him. You will not be alone in that fight. I knew he was trying to make me feel better, but I remembered what Annabeth had told me. It would come down to one hero, one decision that would save or destroy the West. And I felt sure that the fates had been giving me some kind of warning about that. Something terrible was going to happen, either to me or to someone I was close to. I'm just a kid, Chiron, I said miserably. What good is one lousy hero against something like Kronos? Chiron managed a smile. What good is one lousy hero? Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain said something like that to me once, before he single-handedly changed the course of your civil war. He pulled an arrow from his quiver and turned the razor-sharp tip so it glinted in the firelight. Celestial bronze, Percy. An immortal weapon. What would happen if you shot this at a human? Nothing, I said. It would pass right through. That's right, he said. Humans don't exist on the same level as the immortals. They can't even be hurt by our weapons. But you, Percy, you are part god, part human. You live in both worlds. You can be harmed by both, and you can affect both. That's what makes heroes so special. You carry the hope of humanity into the realm of the eternal. Monsters never die. They are reborn from the chaos that is always bubbling underneath civilization, the very stuff that makes Kronos stronger. They must be defeated again and again, kept at bay. Heroes embody that struggle. You fight the battles humanity must win, every generation, in order to stay human. Do you understand? I don't know. You must try, Percy, because whether or not you are the child of the prophecy, Kronos thinks you might be. And after today, he will finally despair of turning you to his side. That is the only reason he hasn't killed you yet, you know. As soon as he's sure he can't use you, he will destroy you. You talk like you know him. Chiron pursed his lips. I do know him. I stared at him. I sometimes forget just how old Chiron is. Is that why Mr. D blamed you when the tree was poisoned? Why you said some people don't trust you? Indeed. But, Chiron, I mean, come on. Why would they think you'd ever betray the camp for Kronos? Chiron's eyes were deep brown, full of thousands of years of sadness. Percy, remember your training. Remember your study of mythology. What is my connection to the Titan Lord? I tried to think, but I'd always gotten my mythology mixed up. Even now, when it was so real, so important to my own life, I had trouble keeping all the names and facts straight. I shook my head. You, owe Kronos a favor or something? He spared your life? Percy, Kronos said, his voice impossibly soft. The Titan Kronos is my father. That I didn't know. I did not remember that. That's crazy. My gosh. That's chapter 18, by the way. Chapter 19. The chariot race ends with a bang. Oh no. Chariot racing again? Come on. Okay. We arrived in Long Island just after Clarice, thanks to the Centaur's travel powers. I rode on Chiron's back, but we didn't talk much, especially not about Kronos. I knew it had been difficult for Chiron to tell me. I didn't want to push him with more questions. I mean, I'd met plenty of embarrassing parents, but Kronos? The evil Titan Lord who wanted to destroy Western civilization? Not the kind of dad you invited to school for career day. When we got to camp, the Centaurs were anxious to meet Dionysus. They'd heard he threw some really wild parties, but they were disappointed. The wine gods was in no mood to celebrate as the whole camp gathered on the top of Half-Blood Hill. The camp had been through a hard 2 weeks. The arts and crafts cabin had burned to the ground from attack from a Draco Aeonius, which as near as I could figure was Latin for really big lizard with breath that blows stuff up. The big house's rooms were overflowing with wounded. The kids in the Apollo's cabin, who were the best healers, had been working overtime performing first aid. Everyone looked weary and battered as we crowded around Thalia's tree. The moment Clarice draped the golden fleece over the lowest bough, the moonlight seemed to brighten, turning from gray to liquid silver. A cool breeze rustled in the branches and rippled through the grass, all the way into the valley. Everything came into sharper focus. The glow of the fireflies down in the woods, the smell of the strawberry fields, the sounds of the waves on the beach. Gradually, the needles on the pine tree started turning from brown to green. Everyone cheered. It was happening slowly, but there could be no doubt. The fleece's magic was seeping into the tree, filling it with new power and expelling the poison. Chiron ordered a 24/7 guard duty on the hilltop, at least until he could find an appropriate monster to protect the fleece. He said he'd place an ad on Olympus Weekly right away. In the meantime, Clarice was carried on her cabin mate's shoulders down to the amphitheater, where she was honored with a laurel wreath and a lot of celebrating around the campfire. No one gave Annabeth or me a second look. It was as if we'd never left. In a way, I guess that was the best thank you anyone could give us, because if they'd admitted we'd snuck out of camp to do the quest, they'd have to expel us. And really, I didn't want any more attention. It felt good to just be one of the campers for once. Later that night, as we were roasting s'mores and listening to the Stoll brothers tell us a ghost story about an evil king who was eaten alive by demonic breakfast pastries, Clarice shoved me from behind and whispered in my ear, "Just because you were cool one time, Jackson, don't think you're off the hook with Ares. I'm still waiting for the right opportunity to pulverize you." I gave her a grudging smile. "What?" she demanded. "Nothing," I said. "Just good to be home." The next morning, after the party ponies headed back to Florida, Chiron made a surprise announcement. The chariot races would go ahead as scheduled. We'd all figured they were history now that Tantalus was gone, but completing them did feel like the right thing to do, especially now that Chiron was back and the camp was safe. Tyson wasn't too keen on the idea of getting back in a chariot after our first experience, but he was happy to let me team up with Annabeth. I would drive, Annabeth would defend, and Tyson would act as our pit crew. While I worked with the horses, Tyson picked up Athena's chariot and added a whole bunch of special modifications. We spent the next 2 days training like crazy. Annabeth and I agreed that if we won, the prize of no chores for the rest of the month would be split between our two cabins. Since Athena had more campers, they would get most of their time off, which was fine by me. I didn't care about the prize. I just wanted to win. The night before the race, I stayed late at the stables. I was talking to our horses, giving them one final brushing, when someone right behind me said, "Fine animals. Horses. Wish I thought of 'em." A middle-aged guy in a postal carrier outfit was leaning against a stable door. He was slim, with curly black hair under his white pith helmet, and he had a mailbag slung over his shoulder. Hermes? I stammered. Hello, Percy. Didn't recognize me without my jogging clothes? I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to kneel or buy stamps from him or what. Then it occurred to me why he must be here. Oh, listen, Lord Hermes, about Luke. The god arched his eyebrows. We saw him all right, I said, but you weren't able to talk sense into him? Well, we kind of tried to kill each other in a duel to the death. I see. You tried the diplomatic approach. I'm really sorry. I mean, you gave us those awesome gifts and everything, and I know you really wanted Luke to come back, but he's turned bad. Really bad. He says he feels like you abandoned him. I waited for Hermes to get angry. I figured he'd turn me into a hamster or something, and I did not want to spend any more time as a rodent. Instead, he just sighed. Do you ever feel your father abandoned you, Percy? Oh, man. I wanted to say, only a few hundred times a day. I hadn't even spoken to Poseidon since last summer. I had never even been to his underwater palace. And then there was the whole thing with Tyson. No warning, no explanation. Just boom, you have a brother. You'd think that deserved a little heads-up phone call or something. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I realized I did want recognition for the quest I'd completed, but not from the other campers. I wanted my dad to say something, to notice me. Hermes readjusted the mailbag on his shoulder. Percy, the hardest thing about being a god is that you must often act indirectly, especially when it comes to your own children. If we were to intervene every time our children had a problem, well, that would only create more problems and more resentment. But I believe if you give it some thought, you will see that Poseidon has been paying attention to you. He has answered your prayers. I can only hope that someday Luke may realize the same about me. Whether you feel like you succeeded or not, you reminded Luke who he was. You spoke to him. I tried to kill him. Hermes shrugged. Families are messy. Immortal families are eternally messy. Sometimes the best we can do is to remind each other that we're related, for better or worse, and try to keep the maiming and killing to a minimum. It didn't sound like much of a recipe for the perfect family. Then again, as I thought about my quest, I realized maybe Hermes was right. Poseidon had set the hippocampus to help us. He'd given me powers over the sea that I'd never known about before. And there was Tyson. Had Poseidon brought us together on purpose? How many times had Tyson saved my life this summer? In the distance, the conch horn sounded, signaling curfew. You should get to bed, Hermes said. I've helped you get into quite enough trouble this summer already. I really only came to make this delivery. A delivery? I am the messenger of the gods, Percy. He took an electronic signature pad from his mailbag and handed it to me. Sign there, please. I picked up the stylus before realizing it was entwined with a pair of tiny green snakes. Ah! I dropped the pad. Ouch, said George. Really, Percy, Martha scolded. Would you want to be dropped onto a floor of a horse stable? Oh, sorry. I didn't much like touching snakes, but I picked up the pad and the stylus again. Martha and George wriggled under my fingers, forming a kind of pencil grip like the ones my special ed teacher made me use in 2nd grade. Did you bring me a rat? George asked. No, I said. We didn't find any. What about a guinea pig? George, Martha chided. Don't tease the boy. I signed my name and gave the pad back to Hermes. In exchange, he handed me a sea blue envelope. My fingers trembled. Even before I opened it, I could tell it was from my father. I could sense his power in the cold blue paper, as if the envelope itself had been folded out of an ocean wave. Good luck tomorrow, Hermes said. Fine team of horses you have there, though you'll excuse me if I root for the Hermes cabin. And don't be too discouraged when you read it, dear, Martha told me. He does have your best interests at heart. What do you mean? I asked. Don't mind her, George said, and next time, remember, snakes work for tips. Enough, you two, Hermes said. Goodbye, Percy. For now. Small white wings sprouted from a pith helmet. He began to glow, and I knew enough about the gods to avert my eyes before he revealed his true divine form. With a brilliant white flash, he was gone, and I was alone with the horses. I stared at the blue envelope in my hands. It was addressed in strong but elegant handwriting that I'd seen once before, on a package Poseidon had sent me last summer. Percy Jackson, Camp Half-Blood, Farm Road 3141, Long Island, New York, 11954. An actual letter from my father. Maybe he would tell me I'd done a good job getting the fleece. He'd explain about Tyson, or apologize for not talking to me sooner. There were so many things I wanted that letter to say. I opened the envelope and unfolded the paper. 2 simple words were printed in the middle of the page. Brace yourself. The next morning, everyone was buzzing about the chariot race, though they kept glancing nervously towards the sky, like they expected to see the Stymphalian birds gathering. None did. It was a beautiful summer day with blue sky and plenty of sunshine. The camp started to look the way it should look. The meadows were green and lush. The white columns gleamed on the Greek buildings. Dryads played happily in the woods. And I was miserable. I'd been lying awake all night thinking about Poseidon's warning. Brace yourself. I mean, he goes to the trouble of writing a letter and he writes 2 words? Martha the snake had told me not to feel disappointed. Maybe Poseidon had a reason for being so vague. Maybe he didn't know exactly what he was warning me about, but he sensed something big was about to happen. Something that could completely knock me off my feet unless I was prepared. It was hard, but I tried to turn my thoughts to the race. As Annabeth and I rode out onto the track, I couldn't help admiring the work Tyson had done on the Athena chariot. The carriage gleamed with bronze reinforcements. The wheels were realigned with magical suspension, so we glided along with hardly a bump. The rigging for the horses was so perfectly balanced that the team turned at the slightest tug of the reins. Tyson had also made us 2 javelins, each with 3 buttons on the shaft. The first button primed the javelin to explode on impact, releasing razor wire that would tangle and shred an opponent's wheels. The second button produced a blunt, but still very peaceful, bronze spearhead designed to knock a driver out of his carriage. The third button brought up a grappling hook that could be used to lock onto an enemy's chariot or push it away. I figured we were in pretty good shape for the race, but Tyson still warned me to be careful. The other chariot teams still had plenty of tricks up their togas. Here, he said, just before the race began. He handed me a wristwatch. There wasn't anything special about it, just a white and silver clock face, a black leather strap, but as soon as I saw it, I'd realized this is what I'd seen him tinkering on all summer. I don't usually like to wear watches, but who cared what time it was? But I couldn't say no to Tyson. Thanks, man. I put it on and found it was surprisingly light and comfortable. I could hardly tell I was wearing it. Didn't finish in time for the trip, Tyson mumbled. Sorry. Hey man, no big deal. But if you need protection in race, he advised, hit the button. Ah, okay. I didn't see how keeping time was going to help a lot, but I was touched that Tyson was concerned. I promised him I'd remember the watch. And hey, Tyson? He looked at me. I wanted to say, well, I tried to figure out how to apologize for getting embarrassed about him before the quest, for telling everyone he wasn't my real brother. It wasn't easy to find the words. I know what you will tell me, Tyson said, looking ashamed. Poseidon did care for me after all. Well, he sent you to help me. Just what I asked for. I blinked. You asked Poseidon for me? For a friend, Tyson said, twisting his shirt in his hands. Young Cyclops grow up alone on the streets. Learn how to make things out of scraps. Learn to survive. But that's so cruel. He shook his head earnestly. Makes us appreciate blessings, not be greedy and mean and fat like Polyphemus. But I got scared. Monsters chased me so much. Clawed me sometimes. The scars on your back? A tear welled in his eye. Sphinx on 72nd Street. Big bully. I prayed to Daddy for help. Soon the people at Merryweather found me. Met you. Biggest blessing ever. Sorry I said Poseidon was mean. He sent me a brother. I stared at the watch that Tyson had made me. Percy, Annabeth called. Come on. Kyron was at the starting line waiting to blow the conch. Tyson, I said. Go, Tyson said. You will win. Yeah, okay, big guy. We'll win this one for you. I climbed on board the chariot and got into position just as Kyron blew the starting signal. He's gonna make me cry. The horses knew what to do. We shot down the track so fast I would have fallen out if my arms hadn't been wrapped in the leather reins. Annabeth held on tight to the rail. The wheels glided beautifully. We took the first turn a full chariot length ahead of Clarice, who was busy trying to fight off a javelin attack from the Stoll brothers in the Hermes chariot. We've got him, I yelled, but I spoke too soon. Incoming, Annabeth yelled. She threw her first javelin in grappling hook mode, knocking away a leaded weight net that would have entangled us both. Apollo's chariot had come up on our flank. Before Annabeth could rearm herself, the Apollo warrior threw a javelin onto our right wheel. The javelin shattered, but not before snapping some of our spokes. Our chariot lurched and wobbled. I was sure that the wheel would collapse altogether, but we somehow kept going. I urged the horses to keep up the speed. We were now neck and neck with Apollo. Hephaestus was coming up close behind. Ares and Hermes were falling behind, riding side by side, as Clarice went sword on javelin with Connor stole. If we took one more hit to our wheel, I knew we would capsize. "You're mine!" the driver from Apollo yelled. He was a first-year camper. I didn't remember his name, but he sure was confident. "Yeah, right," Annabeth yelled back. She picked up her second javelin, a real risk considering we still had one full lap to go, threw it at the Apollo driver. Her aim was perfect. The javelin grew a heavy spear point just as it caught the driver in the chest, knocking him against his teammate and sending them both toppling out of their chariot in a backward somersault. The horses felt the reins go slack and went crazy, riding straight for the crowd. Campers scrambled for cover as the horses leaped the corner of the bleachers and the golden chariot flipped over. The horses galloped back towards their stable, dragging their upside-down chariot behind them. I held our own chariot together through the second turn, despite the groaning of the right wheel. We passed the starting line and thundered into our final lap. The axle creaked and moaned. The wobbling wheel was making us lose speed, even though the horses were responding to my every command, running like a well-oiled machine. The Hephaestus team was still gaining. Beckendorf grinned as he pressed a button on his command console. Steel cables shot out of the front of his mechanical horse, wrapping around our back rail. Our chariot shuddered as Beckendorf's winch system started working, pulling us backwards while Beckendorf pulled himself forward. Annabeth cursed and drew her knife. She hacked at the cables, but they were too thick. "Can't cut them!" she yelled. The Hephaestus chariot was now dangerously close, their horses about to trample us underfoot. "Switch with me," I told Annabeth. "Take the reins! But trust me!" She pulled herself to the front and grabbed the reins. I turned, trying hard to keep my footing, and uncapped her riptide. I slashed down, and the cable snapped like a kite string. We lurched forward, but Beckendorf's driver just swung his chariot to our left and pulled up next to us. Beckendorf drew his sword. He slashed at Annabeth, and I parried the blade away. We were coming up on the last turn. We'd never make it. I needed to disable the Hephaestus chariot and get it out of the way, but I had to protect Annabeth too. Just because Beckendorf was a nice guy didn't mean he wouldn't send us both to the infirmary if we both let our guard down. We were neck and neck now, Clarice coming up from behind, making up for lost time. "See ya, Percy!" Beckendorf yelled. "Here's a little parting gift." He threw a leather pouch in our chariot. It stuck to the floor immediately and began billowing green smoke. "Greek fire!" Annabeth yelled. I cursed. I had heard stories about what Greek fire could do. I figured we had about maybe 10 seconds before it exploded. "Get rid of it!" Annabeth shouted, but I couldn't. Hephaestus's chariot was still alongside, waiting until the last second to make sure the little present blew up. Beckendorf was keeping me busy with the sword. If I let my guard down long enough to deal with the Greek fire, Annabeth would get sliced and we'd crash anyway. I tried to kick the leather pouch away from my foot, but I couldn't. It was stuck fast. Then I remembered the watch. I don't know how it could help, but I managed to press the stopwatch button. Instantly, the watch changed. It expanded, a metal rim spiraling outward like an old-fashioned camera shutter, a leather strap wrapping around my forearm until I was holding a round war shield 4 feet wide, the inside soft leather, the outside polished bronze engraved with designs I didn't have time to examine. All I knew, Tyson had come through. I raised the shield, and Beckendorf's sword clanged against it. His blade shattered. "What?" he shouted. "How?" He didn't have time to say more, because I knocked him in the chest with my new shield and sent him flying out of his chariot, tumbling in the dirt. I was about to use riptide to slash at the driver when Annabeth yelled, "Percy!" The Greek fire was shooting sparks. I shoved the tip of my sword under the leather pouch and flipped it like a spatula. The firebomb dislodged and flew into the Hephaestus chariot at the driver's feet. He yelped. In a split second, the driver made the right choice. He dove out of the chariot, which careened away and exploded in green flames. The metal horses seemed to short-circuit. They turned and dragged the burning wreckage back towards Clarice and the Stoll brothers, who had to swerve to avoid it. Annabeth pulled on the reins for the last turn. I held on, sure we would capsize, but somehow she brought us through and spurred the horses across the finish line. The crowd roared. Once the chariot stopped, our friends mobbed us. They started chanting our names, but Annabeth yelled over the noise. "Hold up! Listen! It wasn't just us!" The crowd didn't want to be quiet, but Annabeth made herself heard. "We couldn't have done it without somebody else. We couldn't have won this race or gotten the fleece or saved Grover or anything. We owe our lives to Tyson, Percy's brother," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Tyson, my baby brother." I am going to cry. Tyson blushed. The crowd cheered. Annabeth planted a kiss on my cheek. The roaring got a lot louder after that. The entire Athena cabin lifted me and Annabeth and Tyson onto their shoulders and carried us towards the winner's platform, where Chiron was waiting to bestow the laurel wreaths. My heart. My heart. Oh, Tyson. Oh, my heart. Oh my gosh. This book is so good. Like, it's, oh my gosh. Oh, that's so cute. Faye, I don't blame you. That's so cute. Like, just the full circle. Him being able to publicly be proud of Tyson. After knowing what Tyson went through and that he actually prayed for Percy is. Also, Annabeth kissing Percy on the cheek. That's. This is just like a whirlwind of like a couple of days. Like, we get Perkabeth kiss on cheek, and then we get Percy. Not only Percy publicly being like, "This is my baby brother, guys." We also have Annabeth being like, Tyson did this. Like, Tyson was a part of our team. Annabeth, the person who was traumatized by Cyclops. Like, that's. I love Tyson so much. I love Percy. I love Annabeth. Chapter 20. The fleece works its magic too well. That afternoon was one of the happiest I'd ever spent at camp. Which maybe goes to show, you never know when your world is about to be rocked to pieces. Grover announced that he'd be able to spend the rest of the summer with us before resuming his quest for Pan. His bosses at the Council of Cloven Elders were so impressed that he hadn't gotten himself killed and had cleared the way for future searchers that they granted him a 2-month furlough and a new set of reed pipes. The only bad news, Grover insisted on playing those pipes all afternoon long, and his musical skills hadn't improved much. He played YMCA, and the strawberry plants started going crazy, wrapping around our feet like they were trying to strangle us. I guess I couldn't blame them. Grover told me he could dissolve the empathy link between us. But I told him I'd just assume I'd keep it if that was okay with him. He put down his reed pipes and stared at me. But if I get in trouble again, you'd be in danger, Percy. You could die. If you get in trouble again, I want to know about it. And I'll come help you again, G-Man. I wouldn't have it any other way. In the end, he agreed not to break the link. He went back to playing YMCA for the strawberry plants. I didn't need an empathy link with the plants to know how they felt about it. Later on, during archery class, Chiron pulled me aside and told me he'd fix my problems with Merryweather Prep. The school no longer blamed me for destroying their gymnasium. The police were no longer looking for me. How did you manage that? I asked. Chiron's eyes twinkled. I merely suggested that the mortals had seen something different on that day. A furnace explosion that was not your fault. You just said that and they bought it? I manipulated the mist. Someday, when you're ready, I'll show you how it's done. You mean I can go back to Merryweather next year? Chiron raised his eyebrows. Oh, no, they've still expelled you. Your headmaster, Mr. Bonsai, said you had, how'd he put it? Ungroovy karma that disrupted the school's educational aura. But you're not in any legal trouble, which was a relief to your mother. Oh, and speaking of your mother. He unclipped his cell phone from his quiver and handed it to me. It's high time you called her. The worst part was the beginning. The Percy Jackson, what were you thinking? Do you have any idea how worried I was sneaking off to camp without permission, going on dangerous quests and scaring me out to death? Part. But finally she paused to catch her breath. Oh, I'm just glad you're safe. That's the great thing about my mom. She's no good at staying angry. She tries, but it just isn't in her nature. I'm sorry, Mom, I told her. I won't scare you again. Yeah, right. Don't promise me that, Percy. You know very well it will only get worse. She tried to sound casual about it, but I could tell she was pretty shaken up. I wanted to say something to make her feel better, but I knew she was right. Being a half-blood, I would always be doing things that scared her, and as I got older, the dangers would just get greater. I could come home for a while, I offered. No, stay at camp. Train. Do what you need to do, but you will come home for the next school year? Yeah, of course, if there's any school that will take me. Oh, we'll find something, dear, my mother sighed. Some place where they don't know us yet. As for Tyson, the campers treated him like a hero. I would have been happy to have him as my cabin mate forever, but that evening, as we were sitting on a sand dune overlooking the Long Island Sound, he made an announcement that completely took me by surprise. Dream came from Daddy last night, he said. He wants me to visit. I wondered if he was kidding, but Tyson really didn't know how to kid. Poseidon sent you a dream message? Tyson nodded. Wants me to go underwater for the rest of the summer. Learn to work at Cyclops' forge. He called it an internship? Yes. I let that sink in. I'll admit, I felt a little jealous. Poseidon had never invited me underwater, but then I thought Tyson was going? Just like that? When will you leave? I asked. Now. Now. Like, now? Now. I stared out at the waves of the Long Island Sound. The water was glistening red in the sunset. I'm happy for you, big guy, I managed, seriously. Hard to leave my new brother, he said with a tremble in his voice. But I want to make things. Weapons for the camp. You will need them. Unfortunately, I knew he was right. The fleece hadn't solved all the camp's problems. Luke was still out there, gathering an army aboard the Princess Andromeda. Kronos was still reforming in his golden coffin. Eventually, we would have to fight them. You'll make the best weapons ever, I told Tyson. I held up my watch proudly. I bet they'll tell good time, too. Tyson sniffled. Brothers help each other. You're my brother, I said, no doubt about it. He patted me on the back so hard he almost knocked me down the sand dune. Then he wiped a tear from his cheek and stood to go. Use the shield well. I will, big guy. Save your life someday. The way he said it, so matter of fact, I wondered if that Cyclops eye of his could see into the future. He headed down the beach and whistled. Rainbow, the hippocampus, burst out of the waves. I watched the two of them ride off together to the realm of Poseidon. Once they were gone, I looked down at my new wristwatch. I pressed a button and the shield spiraled out to full size. Hammered into the bronze were pictures in ancient Greek style. Scenes of our adventures this summer. There was Annabeth slaying a Langostonian dodgeball player, me fighting the bronze bulls on Half-Blood Hill, Tyson riding Rainbow towards the Princess Andromeda, the CSS Birmingham blasting its cannons at Kerberos. I ran my hand across the picture of Tyson battling the Hydra as he held aloft a box of monster donuts. I couldn't help feeling sad. I knew Tyson would have an awesome time under the sea, but I'd miss everything about him. His fascination with horses, the way he could fix chariots or crumple metal with his bare hands, or tie bad guys into knots. I'd even miss him snoring like an earthquake in the next bunk all night. Dude, I have like goosebumps. I'm so sad. I'm so sad. Oh no. Hey, Percy. I turned. Annabeth and Grover were standing at the top of the sand dune. I guess maybe I had some sand in my eyes because I was blinking a lot. Tyson, I told them, he had to... We know, Annabeth said softly. Chiron told us. Cyclops' forge, Grover shuddered. I hear the cafeteria food there is terrible. Like, no enchiladas at all. Annabeth held out her hand. Come on, seaweed brain. Time for dinner. We walked back to the dining pavilion together, just the three of us, like old times. A storm raged that night, but it parted around Camp Half-Blood as storms usually did. Lightning flashed against the horizon, waves pounded the shore, but not a drop fell in our valley. We were protected again, thanks to the fleece, sealed inside our magical borders. Still, my dreams were restless. I heard Kronos taunting me from the depths of Tartarus. Polyphemus sits blindly in his cave, young hero, believing he has won a great victory. Are you any less deluded? The Titan's cold laughter filled the darkness. Then, my dream changed. I was following Tyson to the bottom of the sea, into the court of Poseidon. It was a radiant hall filled with blue light, the floor cobbled with pearls. And there, on a throne of coral, sat my father, dressed like a simple fisherman in khaki shorts and a sun-bleached t-shirt. I looked up into his tan, weathered face, his deep green eyes, and he spoke 2 words. Brace yourself. I woke with a start. There was a banging on the door. Grover flew inside without waiting for permission. Percy! He stammered. Annabeth? On the hill? She... The look in his eyes told me something was terribly wrong. Annabeth had been on guard duty that night, protecting the fleece. If something had happened... I ripped off the covers, my blood like ice water in my veins. I threw on some clothes while Grover tried to make a complete sentence, but he was too stunned, too out of breath. She's lying there, just lying there. I ran outside and ran across the central yard, Grover right behind me. Dawn was just breaking, but the whole camp seemed to be stirring. Word was spreading. Something huge had happened. A few campers were already making their way to the hill, satyrs and nymphs and heroes in a weird mix of armor and pajamas. I heard the clop of horse hooves and Chiron galloped behind us, looking grim. Is it true? He asked Grover. Grover could only nod, his expression dazed. I tried to ask what was going on, but Chiron grabbed me by the arm and effortlessly lifted me onto his back. Together, we thundered up Half-Blood Hill where a small crowd had started together. I expected to see the fleece missing from the pine tree, but it was still there, glinting in the first light of dawn. The storm had broken, and the sky was blood red. "Curse the Titan Lord," Chiron said. "He's tricked us again, given himself another chance to control the prophecy." "What do you mean?" I asked. "The fleece," he said. "The fleece did its work too well." We galloped forward, everyone moving out of our way. At the base of the tree, a girl was lying unconscious. Another girl in Greek armor was kneeling next to her. Blood roared in my ears. I couldn't think straight. Annabeth had been attacked? But why was the fleece still there? The tree itself looked perfectly fine, whole and healthy, suffused with the essence of the golden fleece. "It healed the tree," Chiron said, his voice ragged, "and poison was not the only thing it purged." Then I realized Annabeth wasn't the one lying on the ground. She was the one in armor, kneeling next to the unconscious girl. When Annabeth saw us, she ran to Chiron. She, just suddenly there." Her eyes were streaming with tears, but I still didn't understand. I was too freaked out to make sense of it all. I leaped off Chiron's back and ran towards the unconscious girl. Chiron said, "Percy, wait!" I knelt by her side. She had short black hair and freckles across her nose. She was built like a long-distance runner, lithe and strong. She wore clothes that were somewhere between punk and goth. A black t-shirt, black tattered jeans, and a leather jacket with buttons from a bunch of bands I'd never heard of. She wasn't a camper. I didn't recognize her from any of the cabins, and yet I had the strangest feeling I'd seen her before. "It's true," Grover said, panting from his run up the hill. "I can't believe—" No one else came close to the girl. I put my hand on her forehead. Her skin was cold, but my fingertips tingled as if they were burning. "She needs nectar and ambrosia," I said. She was clearly a half-blood, whether she was a camper or not. I could sense that from just one touch. I didn't understand why everyone was acting so scared. I took her by the shoulders and lifted her into sitting position, resting her head on my shoulder. "Come on," I yelled to the others. "What's wrong with you people? Let's get her to the big house." No one moved, not even Chiron. They were all too stunned. Then the girl took a shaky breath. She coughed and opened her eyes. Her irises were startlingly blue, electric blue. The girl stared at me in bewilderment, shivering and wild eyes. "I'm Percy," I said. "You're safe now." "Strangest dream." "It's okay." "Dying." "No," I assured her. "You're okay." "What's your name?" That's when I knew, even before she said it. The girl's blue eyes stared into mine, and I understood what the Golden Fleece quest had been about. The poisoning of the tree. Everything. Kronos had done it to bring another chess piece into play. Another chance to control the prophecy. Even Chiron, Annabeth, and Grover, who should have been celebrating this moment, were too shocked, thinking about what it might mean for the future. And I was holding someone who was destined to be my best friend, or possibly my worst enemy. "I am Thalia," the girl said, "daughter of Zeus." So good. Oh my gosh. So good. So good. Oh my gosh. Dude, that's the end of the Sea of Monsters. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that is so crazy that it was kind of masterminded so that it's like they get the Golden Fleece, so either the Golden Fleece helps Kronos or the Golden Fleece, brings back Thalia. And now there's two more, and now there's one more demigod. I can't believe that is the end of Sea of Monsters. Final thoughts? I don't know. I like this book. This book is so good. I love the kind of slower chapters there at the end that kind of gives a little insight to Annabeth and Tyson and Percy and the way he thinks about Tyson. And wow, it's so good. I love this so much. I'm really happy we finished reading this. Yeah, thank you guys for joining me for book 2. I had so much fun reading this.